On a night when Manhattan froze under December's cruelest breath, a young woman with blood on her dress and terror in her eyes pushed through the doors of the city's most exclusive restaurant, a place where silence cost more than champagne and power wore bespoke Italian wool. Her name, for now, was Elara Vance. She didn't walk. She stumbled. The marble floor rose to meet her like a final judgment, but before gravity could claim her broken body, she fell into the arms of Roman DeLuca, the man who made senators sweat and billionaires bow. The room emptied in heartbeats, and in the terrible quiet that followed, as he studied the bruises mapping her face like a history of violence, he leaned close and whispered 6 words that would rewrite her entire world. No one touches what's under my protection. If you want to see where this story takes you, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far Elara's journey has traveled. Stay until the end. You won't want to miss what happens next. The blood had dried on her left temple, dark and flaking, but the cut above her eyebrow was fresh enough to weep. Elara felt it track down her cheek as she pushed through the heavy glass door, her shoulder colliding with the frame because her depth perception had gone sideways about 3 blocks back. The cold bit through the torn fabric of her dress, black, expensive once, now ruined, and her bare feet left smudges of something she didn't want to identify on the pristine white marble of the entrance. The restaurant was called Silks. She'd read about it once in a magazine left behind in a coffee shop. Members only. No sign outside. If you had to ask where it was, you'd never get in. The kind of place where a single meal cost what most people earned in a month. Where deals worth billions were sealed over oysters and aged whiskey. Where the waitstaff moved like ghosts and knew better than to remember faces. She had no plan. No reason to be here except that the doors had been open and the warmth had pulled her inside like a siren song, and she'd been running for so long that her legs had simply given up on finding somewhere safe and settled for somewhere warm. The maitre d' appeared from nowhere, his face a mask of polite horror. "Miss, I'm afraid." She tried to speak, but her throat closed around the words. Her knees buckled. And then there were hands, strong, steady, catching her before the floor could. She looked up into a face carved from shadow and stone. Dark eyes that didn't blink, a jaw sharp enough to cut glass, hair black as spilled ink, slicked back from a face too severe to be called handsome but too magnetic to look away from. He wore a suit that probably cost more than a luxury car, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, tailored so precisely it might as well have been armor. Roman DeLuca didn't ask questions. He simply lifted her, effortlessly, as though she weighed nothing, and carried her past the maitre d' whose face had gone white, past the scattered tables where conversations died mid-sentence, past the bar where even the bartender froze with a bottle of Macallan halfway to a glass. The room emptied like someone had pulled a fire alarm. Chairs scraped, coats were grabbed. Within 30 seconds, the space that had been full of Manhattan's elite was empty, except for the 2 of them and the staff, who had retreated into the kitchen and closed the doors. "Breathe," Roman said. His voice was low, textured like expensive whiskey, with an edge that suggested he didn't repeat himself. Elara tried. Her chest hitched. Her vision swam. He set her down carefully on one of the plush chairs near the window, the kind that cost more than most people's rent, then crouched in front of her so they were eye level. Up close, she could see the scar that ran along his left cheekbone, thin and white, barely visible unless you were looking for it. Could smell his cologne, something dark and woody, with undertones of leather and smoke. Who did this? Not a question, a demand. She shook her head. Words were a foreign language suddenly. Roman's jaw tightened. He pulled a phone from his jacket pocket, pressed a button, and spoke without taking his eyes off her. "Victor, Silks. Now. Bring the doctor." He ended the call and pocketed the phone in one smooth motion. "You're safe now." The laugh that escaped her throat was broken glass. Safe. She didn't know what that word meant anymore. He studied her for a long moment, those dark eyes cataloging every bruise, every cut, every tremor running through her body. Then he stood, removed his jacket, and draped it over her shoulders. The silk lining was still warm from his body heat. It smelled like him, that same dark, dangerous scent that made her think of locked rooms and whispered threats and power that didn't need to announce itself. "What's your name?" "Elara." Her voice came out hoarse, barely recognizable. Elara Vance? Elara. He tested it, rolling the syllables like he was deciding whether to keep them. I'm Roman, and you're going to tell me exactly who put their hands on you. She should have been terrified. This man radiated danger like heat from asphalt in August. The way the room had cleared when he'd caught her, the way even the staff had vanished, it spoke to a kind of power that didn't come from money alone. This was the power of fear, of reputation, of violence held on a leash so short it could snap at any moment. But she wasn't scared. Not of him. Maybe because she was too broken to recognize new threats. Maybe because the worst had already happened, and there was a strange comfort in the arms of something predatory when you'd been prey for so long. Or maybe because when he looked at her, she didn't see pity. She saw rage on her behalf, and that was a gift she hadn't known she needed. The door opened and two men entered. One was broad-shouldered and bald, with the kind of face that suggested he'd seen too much and forgotten how to smile. He carried a black leather bag. The other was younger, maybe 30, with sharp features and eyes that took in the entire room in a single sweep before settling on Roman. Boss, the younger one said. Victor, she guessed. Roman gestured to Elara without looking away from her. Dr. Chen, take care of her. The bald man approached cautiously, setting his bag down on the table beside her. I'm going to examine you, miss. Is that all right? Elara nodded. Words still felt like too much effort. Dr. Chen worked with efficient gentleness, checking her pupils with a penlight, probing the cut on her forehead, running careful fingers along her ribs. She winced when he touched her left side. Bruised, possibly fractured, he murmured. You've been through hell. Caleb, Elara whispered. The name tasted like poison. Roman's head snapped toward her. Say that again. Caleb Rourke, louder this time. He was my boyfriend. For 2 years. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Victor shifted his weight, his hand moving unconsciously toward his jacket. Roman's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went very still, very cold. Where is he now? I don't know. I ran. I ran. He's looking for you. It wasn't a question, and Elara nodded because, of course, Caleb was looking for her. Men like Caleb didn't let their possessions walk away. She'd learned that the first time she'd tried to leave, 6 months ago, when he'd found her at her sister's apartment and put her in the hospital with a concussion and 3 broken fingers. She'd learned it again 2 months ago when she'd made it as far as a bus station in Newark, before he'd dragged her back by her hair and locked her in their apartment for a week. She'd learned it tonight when she'd waited until he passed out drunk and then run with nothing but the dress on her back and $50 she'd been hiding in a tampon box for 8 months. Roman turned to Victor. Find him. How deep you want me to dig? Deep enough to know every breath he's taken since birth. I want his bank accounts, his phone records, his parking tickets, his 3rd grade report card. I want to know who he owes money to and who owes him favors. I want his life in a file on my desk by morning. Victor nodded and left without another word. Dr. Chen finished his examination and began cleaning the cut on her forehead. The antiseptic stung, but Elara didn't flinch. Pain was old news. She needs rest, Dr. Chen said to Roman, and probably a CT scan, though I don't think there's a concussion. The ribs need wrapping. I can do that here, but she should see a specialist within the next few days. She'll see whoever she needs to see. Roman crossed his arms, a gesture that somehow made him look even more imposing. What else? Dehydration, malnutrition, signs of sustained physical abuse over an extended period. Dr. Chen's voice was clinical, but there was an undercurrent of anger there, professional rage. She needs fluids, food, and safety. In that order. She has all 3 now. Dr. Chen packed his supplies back into the bag with methodical precision. I'll come back tomorrow to check on her. In the meantime, keep her warm, get some liquid in her, and let her sleep. He pulled out a small bottle of pills and set it on the table. Painkillers. Non-narcotic. 2 every 6 hours is needed. After he left, Roman pulled out his phone again and made another call. Prepare the north bedroom and have Maria bring up soup, bread, and tea. Something mild. Elara watched him through the haze of exhaustion that was starting to pull at the edges of her consciousness. Why are you helping me? Roman looked at her for a long moment, those dark eyes unreadable. Because you walked into my place bleeding and afraid, and I don't let that happen without consequences. You don't even know me. I know enough. He moved to the window, looking out at the city sprawled below them like a circuit board of light and shadow. I know you're running from someone who hurt you. I know you're brave enough to walk into a room full of strangers looking like hell and still standing, and I know that as of right now you're under my protection. What does that mean? It means, Roman said, turning back to face her, that if Caleb Rourke is stupid enough to come looking for you, he won't live long enough to regret it. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it sent a chill down her spine because she recognized the tone. It was the same one Caleb used when he made promises. The difference was that Caleb's promises were threats, and she had a feeling Roman's threats were guarantees. I don't want anyone to die because of me, she said quietly. That's not your decision to make. Roman's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then pocketed it again. Can you walk? Alara tried to stand and immediately swayed. Roman was there in an instant, one arm around her waist, supporting her weight. We're going upstairs, he said. My penthouse. You'll stay there until this is resolved. I can't. I don't have anywhere else to go, but I can't just... You're not asking. I'm telling you. There was no room for argument in that tone, and frankly, Alara didn't have the energy to fight. She let him guide her toward the back of the restaurant, through a door marked private, and into an elevator that required a key card to operate. The ride-up was silent. Alara focused on breathing, on staying conscious, on not thinking about what would happen when Caleb found out where she was. Because he would find out. Men like Caleb always did. The elevator opened directly into a space that made her breath catch, despite everything. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that looked like something out of a movie. The city glittering and infinite, stretching to every horizon. The furniture was minimal but expensive, all clean lines and dark leather. Abstract art hung on the walls, pieces that probably cost more than most people's houses. A woman in her 50s appeared from somewhere deeper in the apartment. She had kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, and she didn't bat an eye at Alara's appearance. This is Maria, Roman said. She'll take care of you. Maria smiled gently. Come with me, dear. Let's get you cleaned up. Alara let herself be led down a hallway, past doorways that opened onto rooms she was too tired to process, until they reached a bedroom that was larger than the entire apartment she'd shared with Caleb. The bed looked like something from a luxury hotel, all white linens and too many pillows. There was an ensuite bathroom visible through an open door, all marble and chrome. There are clothes in the closet, Maria said. They should fit well enough for now. I'll bring up food once you've had a chance to shower. Take your time. After she left, Alara stood in the middle of the room and tried to process the last hour of her life. She'd gone from thinking she might die on a Manhattan sidewalk to standing in what was essentially a fortress made of glass and money, protected by a man who radiated danger like a second skin. She should leave, should thank Roman for his help, and disappear into the city before Caleb's violence and Roman's world collided in a way that destroyed everything. But her body made the decision for her, moving toward the bathroom on autopilot. The shower was large enough for 4 people, with multiple heads and controls that looked like they belonged in a spaceship. She figured out the basics and stepped underwater hot enough to hurt. The blood swirled down the drain in pink ribbons. She watched it disappear and thought about how easy it would be to disappear with it. To let the water wash away not just the blood, but everything. Alara Vance and all her bad decisions, all her mistakes, all the times she'd believed Caleb when he said he was sorry, that it would never happen again, that he loved her. She'd believed him because she'd had nowhere else to go, because her family had cut her off after she'd chosen Caleb over them one too many times, because all her friends had slowly drifted away when she kept canceling plans and showing up with new excuses for new bruises. She'd believed him because it was easier than admitting she'd wasted 2 years of her life on a man who saw her as property. The water started to run cold. Alara turned it off and dried herself with a towel so soft it felt like a sin. In the closet, she found clothes as promised, expensive casual wear that still had tags attached. She chose sweatpants and a cashmere sweater, both in gray, both fitting her almost perfectly. When she emerged from the bedroom, she followed the smell of food to a dining area where Maria had set out a tray. Soup that steamed gently, bread that looked homemade, tea in a delicate china cup. Roman was standing at the windows, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what he says he wants, Roman was saying, his voice hard. He forfeited negotiation rights when he put his hands on her. Find him, contain him, and wait for my instructions. He ended the call and turned. His eyes traveled over her, assessing. You look better. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. That's the adrenaline wearing off. Eat. You need food. Elara sat down and picked up the spoon. The soup was some kind of chicken broth with vegetables, simple and perfect. She managed 3 spoonfuls before her stomach rebelled. The bread went down easier. Roman sat across from her watching, not eating, just watching with those dark, unreadable eyes. How did you end up at Silk's? He asked. I was running. The doors were open. I didn't think. She set down the bread, her appetite gone. I didn't know where else to go. Lucky for you. Is it? She met his gaze. You don't know me. For all you know, I'm lying. Maybe I did something to deserve... Stop. The single word cracked like a whip. Whatever you're about to say, stop. No one deserves what was done to you. Elara looked away, her throat tight. You don't know what was done to me. I can see it, and I've seen enough violence in my life to know the difference between a fight and a beating. This was a beating. She couldn't argue with that. Her ribs ached with every breath. Her head throbbed. Her entire body felt like one massive bruise. Tell me about Caleb, Roman said. Why? Because I need to know what I'm dealing with. Elara laughed, but there was no humor in it. He's 6'2", works in finance, drives a BMW. He likes craft beer and classic rock and saying, he's sorry while making sure I know it's actually my fault. He's charming when he wants to be. His coworkers love him. His boss thinks he's brilliant. And when we're alone, he's... Her voice cracked. He's a nightmare. Roman's expression didn't change, but his hands, resting on the table, curled into fists. How long? 2 years. The first 6 months were perfect. He was perfect. And then one night I said something he didn't like, and he grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. He apologized, bought me flowers. I told myself it was a one-time thing, but it wasn't. No, it got worse, gradually. A push here, a slap there, then punches. Then... She couldn't finish. Roman stood abruptly and walked back to the windows. For a long moment he was silent, his silhouette dark against the glittering cityscape. You're safe here, he said finally. He can't reach you. You can't know that. Yes, I can. He turned to face her. Do you know who I am, Elara? She shook her head. I own half this city. The half that matters. I have resources Caleb Rourke can't begin to imagine. And I have a reputation that makes smart men avoid me and stupid men dead. If he comes for you, he dies. It's that simple. The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it terrified her because it meant Roman DeLuca was exactly what he looked like. Dangerous. Powerful. The kind of man who solved problems with violence so casual, it was just another business decision. I don't want to owe you anything, she said quietly. You don't owe me anything. I'm not doing this because I expect payment. Then why? He was quiet for a long moment. Because I can. Because someone should. Because I looked at you tonight and saw someone who needed help, and I don't walk away from that. Elara wanted to believe him, but she'd believed Caleb too once upon a time. She'd believed his promises and his apologies and his declarations of love. She'd believed right up until the moment his fist connected with her face for the 10th time, the 20th, the 100th. I should sleep, she said, standing. The room tilted slightly, and she gripped the edge of the table. Roman moved toward her, but stopped a few feet away, giving her space. The bedroom is yours for as long as you need it. If you need anything, anything at all, there's a phone on the nightstand. Press one. It'll reach me. Elara nodded and made her way back down the hallway. The bed was exactly as soft as it looked, and the moment her head hit the pillow, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. She woke sometime in the deepest part of night, her heart hammering, Caleb's voice echoing in her head. You think you can leave me? You think you can just walk away? For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. Then the details filtered in, the expensive sheets, the city lights visible through the window, the absolute silence of a space insulated from the chaos below. She was in Roman DeLuca's penthouse, under his protection. Safe. The word felt foreign, dangerous, like something that could be snatched away the moment she believed in it. She got up and walked to the window, pressing her palm against the cold glass. Manhattan spread before her, indifferent and infinite. Somewhere down there, Caleb was looking for her, probably furious, definitely dangerous. And somewhere in this apartment was a man who'd promised to protect her, a man she didn't know, didn't understand, but who terrified her less than the alternative. The knock on her door was soft. "Alara? You awake?" Roman's voice. She turned to see him in the doorway, still dressed despite the late hour, or early hour. She'd lost track of time. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Neither could I." He stepped into the room but didn't approach. "Victor just called. We found him." Her heart stopped. "Caleb?" "He's at a bar in Midtown, drunk, telling anyone who'll listen that his girlfriend stole from him and ran off with some other guy." Roman's jaw tightened. "He's making you the villain in his story." Of course he was. That was Caleb's gift. Rewriting history until he was always the victim, always the one wronged. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "That depends on you." "On me?" Roman crossed his arms. "I can make him disappear tonight, permanently. He'd never bother you again." Alara's blood went cold. "You mean kill him?" "I mean solve the problem in a way that guarantees it stays solved." No. The word came out sharper than she intended. "No. I don't want that. I don't want anyone dead because of me." "Even him?" "Even him. He's a bastard, but I can't." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Please don't kill him." Roman studied her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "All right. Then we do this a different way. But understand this. If he comes for you, if he so much as breathes in your direction, I won't ask permission again. Are we clear?" "Yes." He nodded and turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "For what it's worth, you're stronger than you think." Most people would have said yes. After he left, Alara stood at the window until dawn started to crack the eastern sky, painting Manhattan in shades of gray and gold. She thought about strength, about choices, about the difference between safety and survival. And she wondered what it meant that she trusted a man she'd known for less than 12 hours. More than she'd trusted the man she'd spent 2 years with. 3 days passed in a blur of sleep and careful healing. Dr. Chen returned daily, checking her ribs, monitoring the cuts, prescribing rest and fluids and time. Maria brought food she could barely eat and clothes that fit perfectly. Roman appeared and disappeared like a shadow, always polite, always distant, always carrying that undercurrent of controlled violence. On the 4th day, Alara felt strong enough to leave the bedroom for more than brief trips to the dining room. She found Roman in what she'd come to understand was his office, a room dominated by a massive desk and more windows, always windows, as if he needed to see the city he controlled. He looked up when she entered. "How are you feeling?" "Better? The ribs don't hurt as much. Dr. Chen says they're healing well." "He tells you everything, doesn't he?" "He works for me. His loyalty is absolute." Alara sat in one of the chairs across from his desk. "I need to know what's happening with Caleb." Roman leaned back in his chair, studying her. "He's been contained." "What does that mean?" "It means I have people watching him 24/7. He goes nowhere, does nothing, without my knowledge. His bank accounts are frozen. His credit cards don't work. His phone is tapped. He's effectively under house arrest, except he doesn't know it yet. That's illegal. Most effective things are." Roman's expression didn't change. "He tried to file a missing persons report on you. It was buried before it reached anyone who mattered. You can do that?" "I can do a lot of things, Alara. That's why you're safe here." She should have been disturbed by the casual way he talked about manipulating systems, about having power that operated outside the law. Instead, she felt a strange sense of relief. Because if Roman could do all that, maybe she really was safe. "I can't stay here forever," she said. "Why not?" "Because it's not my life. This..." She gestured at the office, the apartment beyond. "This is yours. I'm just hiding." "You're healing." "Same thing." Roman stood and moved to the windows. He did that a lot, she'd noticed, as if the view helped him think. "What do you want, Alara?" "I don't understand the question. If you could have anything, if Caleb wasn't a factor, what would you want your life to look like?" No one had asked her that in 2 years. Caleb had decided what she wanted, what she needed, what she was allowed to have. Before that, she'd had vague dreams, college maybe, or a job that mattered, or travel, things that seemed impossibly distant now. I don't know, she admitted. Then figure it out. You have time. Do I? You said Caleb is contained, not gone. What happens when you get bored of babysitting me, when the novelty wears off? Roman turned from the window, and the look in his eyes pinned her to the chair. I don't get bored of things that matter. And for reasons I'm still working out myself, you matter. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to examine. Alara stood, suddenly needing distance. I need to. There's a library down the hall, Roman said. Books, comfortable chair, no one will bother you. She fled before he could say anything else, before the weight of his attention could crush what was left of her carefully maintained walls. The library was exactly as advertised. Walls of books, a leather chair by yet another window, silence that felt almost sacred. She grabbed a book at random and sank into the chair, but the words blurred on the page because all she could think about was the way Roman had looked at her. The way he'd said, you matter, like it was a fact and not a question. She'd forgotten what it felt like to matter to someone for reasons that didn't involve control or possession. Caleb had made her matter because she was his, because her existence reflected on him, because hurting her gave him a sense of power. Roman made her matter for reasons she didn't understand and wasn't sure she wanted to. Footsteps in the hallway made her tense, but it was just Maria with tea and cookies on a tray. Mr. DeLuca thought you might want something sweet, Maria said, setting the tray on the small table beside the chair. Thank you. Maria hesitated, then said gently, He's a good man, you know, under all that armor. I've worked for him for 8 years, and I've never seen him bring anyone here. You're the first. After Maria left, Alara sat with that information, turning it over like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. The first. In 8 years. What did that mean? She was still trying to work it out when Roman appeared in the doorway hours later, his tie loosened, his jacket gone. Victor found something, he said without preamble. Caleb's been messaging someone, a guy he knows from college, asking for favors. Alara's stomach dropped. What kind of favors? The kind that involve finding people who don't want to be found. Roman's expression was carved from ice. He's trying to hire someone to track you. Can he do that? Not successfully, but the fact that he's trying means he's not backing down. Roman moved into the room, and suddenly the library felt smaller. I need you to make a decision. What kind of decision? Either I end this now, permanently, or we wait and see how far he's willing to go. But understand that waiting puts you at risk. Alara stood, the book falling forgotten to the floor. I told you I don't want him dead. Then what do you want? Because sitting here hoping he'll give up isn't a strategy. It's denial. Don't talk to me about denial, she snapped. You have no idea what it's like to be so afraid of someone that you can't even... Her voice broke. I lived with him for 2 years. I know exactly what he's capable of. And I know that if you kill him, I'll never stop looking over my shoulder, wondering when his friends or his family or someone who loved him will come for revenge. That's what you're worried about? Revenge? Among other things, yes. Roman took a step closer, then another, until they were almost touching. Listen to me very carefully. If I wanted Caleb Rourke dead, he'd already be gone. I'm asking you because I respect your choice, but don't mistake my restraint for weakness, and don't think for 1 second that anyone would dare come after what's mine. I'm not yours, Alara said, but the words came out softer than she intended. Aren't you? His voice was low, dangerous. You're in my home, under my protection, wearing clothes I bought for you. You matter to me, Alara, whether you want to admit it or not. She should have stepped back, should have put distance between them. Instead, she stood frozen as Roman reached out and touched her face, his fingers gentle on the bruise that was finally starting to fade. He did this, Roman said quietly, and a dozen other things I can see and probably 100 I can't. You tell me you don't want him dead, and I'll respect that, but don't ask me to pretend he doesn't deserve it. Alara closed her eyes, torn between the safety Roman offered and the fear that accepting it would mean trading one cage for another. When she opened them again, Roman had stepped back, his expression shuddered. Think about it, he said. But don't take too long. Men like Caleb don't stop. They escalate. He left her alone in the library with tea gone cold and cookies untouched and a choice she didn't know how to make. That night, Alara dreamed of blood on marble floors and hands that caught her before she fell, and when she woke gasping in the dark, she found Roman sitting in the chair by her window, silhouetted against the city lights. "I heard you scream," he said quietly. "I'm fine." "You're not, but you will be." And in that moment, with her heart still racing and sweat cooling on her skin, Alara realized something terrifying. She believed him. Morning came with pale winter light bleeding through the windows, and Alara woke to find Roman gone from the chair, a blanket draped over her that hadn't been there when she'd finally drifted back to sleep. She touched the soft cashmere and felt something twist in her chest. Gratitude mixed with unease, comfort tangled with fear of what it meant to accept kindness from a man like him. She found him in the kitchen, of all places, standing at the counter with a cup of coffee and the morning paper spread in front of him. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black sweater that made him look less like a crime lord and more like someone who could blend into a crowd, which somehow made him more dangerous. "You stayed all night," she said. Roman didn't look up from the paper. "You were having nightmares. I stayed until they stopped." "You didn't have to do that." "I know." He turned a page, still not meeting her eyes. "Maria left breakfast in the warmer. Eat something." Alara moved to the counter and found scrambled eggs, toast, and fruit arranged on a plate covered with foil. Her stomach growled despite her anxiety. She ate standing up, aware of Roman's presence like a magnetic field she couldn't escape. "Victor's coming by in an hour," Roman said, finally looking at her. "He has information about Caleb's associates, the man he's been messaging." "Do I need to be there?" "Only if you want to be." Alara set down her fork, appetite gone. "I don't know what I want anymore." "That's the trauma talking. Give it time." "How much time? A week? A month? How long am I supposed to hide here while you—" She stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. "While I what? Protect you? Keep you safe? Those aren't temporary conditions, Alara. They're not things with expiration dates." "Everything has an expiration date," she said quietly. "Especially things that seem too good to be true." Roman's jaw tightened. He set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. "You think this is too good to be true? You think waking up screaming in the middle of the night is good? Having to look over your shoulder every time you leave this apartment is true? I'm not offering you paradise. I'm offering you a chance to rebuild without someone's fist in your face. And what do you get out of it?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Roman's eyes went dark, unreadable. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I'm not asking you to figure it out right now. I'm asking you to trust me long enough to let me handle Caleb." "Trust?" Alara laughed, but it came out broken. "I trusted him too. Look how that turned out. I'm not him." "How do I know that? How do I know you won't—" She couldn't finish, couldn't voice the fear that lived in her bones now, the certainty that anyone who got close enough would eventually hurt her. Roman moved around the counter in 3 long strides and caught her face in his hands, gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. "Look at me. Really, look at me." His thumbs traced her cheekbones, careful of the fading bruises. "I have done terrible things in my life. I have hurt people who deserved it, and probably some who didn't. I have built an empire on fear and blood and money that doesn't ask questions, but I have never, never raised my hand to a woman, and I never will. That's not who I am." Alara wanted to believe him. The conviction in his voice, the steadiness of his hands, the way he looked at her like she was something precious instead of something broken. It all made her want to believe. "You barely know me," she whispered. "I know enough." He released her and stepped back, giving her space to breathe. "Victor will be here in 45 minutes. You should shower, get dressed, wear something comfortable. This conversation won't be easy." He left her alone in the kitchen with half-eaten eggs and a heart beating too fast. And Alara realized she was standing at a crossroads she didn't know how to navigate. Behind her was Caleb and 2 years of systematic destruction. Ahead was Roman and everything he represented: power, danger, protection bought with violence she couldn't see but knew was there. She chose ahead because going back wasn't an option anymore. Victor arrived exactly on time, which seemed to be a theme with Roman's people. He carried a tablet and a folder thick with papers, and his expression was all business as he shook Alara's hand. Miss Vance, good to see you looking better. Thank you. She sat on the couch, Roman beside her, but maintaining distance. Professional. Like they were colleagues instead of whatever they actually were. Victor opened the folder and pulled out several photographs. The man Caleb has been messaging is named Derek Lim. They went to college together, NYU, class of 2019. Lim works as a private investigator now, mostly insurance fraud and cheating spouses. Not exactly top tier, but competent enough. He slid one of the photos across the coffee table. Alara recognized Derek vaguely. She'd met him once at a party Caleb had dragged her to, back when she'd still been allowed to have a social life. Tall, Asian, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. Caleb offered him $5,000 to find you, Victor continued. Lim accepted yesterday. He's already started making inquiries. Alara's blood went cold. What kind of inquiries? He reached out to your former employer, your landlord from before you moved in with Caleb, a few people from your college alumni network, standard skip tracing procedure. He hasn't connected any dots yet, but he will eventually. How do you know all this? Alara asked. Because I'm better at my job than he is at his, Victor said simply. We've been monitoring his communications since Roman gave the order. Every phone call, every email, every text message. He doesn't know we're watching. Roman leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What's his timeline? He told Caleb he'd have a location within 2 weeks. That was 3 days ago. So we have 11 days. Give or take. Alara felt the walls closing in. 11 days until what? Until he finds me. He won't find you, Roman said flatly. But we need to decide how to handle this before he gets close enough to become a real problem. Handle it how? Victor and Roman exchanged a look that made Alara's stomach clench. We could pay him off, Victor suggested. Double what Caleb's offering. Tell him to drop the case. Men like Lim don't take payoffs, Roman said. They take them and keep looking anyway, then sell the information to whoever pays more. It's not a solution, it's a delay. Then we discredit him, plant evidence of misconduct, get his license pulled. Too slow. And it doesn't stop Caleb from finding someone else. Alara listened to them discuss her life like it was a tactical problem to be solved, and something inside her snapped. Stop. Both of you. Just stop. They turned to look at her. This is my life you're talking about, she said, her voice shaking. Not a business deal, not a problem to solve, my life. And I'm sitting here listening to you plan moves like I'm a chess piece instead of a person. We're trying to protect you, Roman said. No, you're trying to control the situation. There's a difference. She stood, needing to move, to pace, to do something other than sit still while they decided her fate. I ran from Caleb because he controlled everything. Where I went, who I talked to, what I wore, what I ate. I'm not trading one cage for another. Roman's expression darkened. You think that's what this is? A cage? I don't know what this is. You won't tell me. You just keep saying I'm under your protection, like that explains everything, like I'm supposed to be grateful and quiet and let you handle things. Would you prefer I throw you out? Roman's voice was cold now, edged with something dangerous. Let Caleb and his pet investigator find you, see how long you last on your own? The words hit like a slap. Alara stared at him, seeing for the first time the man everyone else saw, the crime lord, the enforcer, the one who didn't ask twice. If that's what you think of me, she said quietly, then maybe I should leave. Alara, no. You don't get to threaten me and then backtrack. You don't get to act like you're some kind of savior when really you just like having someone dependent on you. Roman stood, his full height suddenly intimidating in a way it hadn't been before. You want to know what I get out of this? Fine, I'll tell you. I look at you and I see someone who had the courage to run when running seemed impossible. I see someone who walked into my restaurant bleeding and broken and still refused to let fear win. And I want to be the person who helps you become whoever you were before he destroyed you. That's what I get. The chance to do something good in a life that's been mostly about doing bad. The raw honesty in his voice stopped her cold. Victor had gone very still, his expression carefully neutral. You can leave any time you want, Roman continued, his voice softer now. I'm not keeping you here. But if you go without my protection, and that means Caleb wins. Is that what you want? I don't want anyone to win, Alara said. I just want to stop being afraid. Then let me help you. By doing what? Killing Derek Lim? Killing Caleb? How many people have to die before I'm allowed to feel safe? As many as it takes. The certainty in his voice should have horrified her. Instead, it made her want to cry because somewhere along the way, she'd stopped believing anyone would fight for her this hard. Victor cleared his throat. There might be another option. They both turned to look at him. We could draw Caleb out, Victor said slowly, like he was working through the idea as he spoke. Set up a meeting on our terms, in a place we control. Let him think he's found her. Absolutely not, Roman said immediately. Hear me out. If we bring him into our territory, we control every variable. He can't hurt her, and we can deliver a message that makes him back off permanently. What kind of message? Elara asked. Victor's smile was thin and sharp. The kind that doesn't require words. Roman shook his head. Too risky. He could bring backup. He could go to the police. He won't, Elara interrupted. Both men looked at her. Caleb doesn't involve outsiders. His ego won't let him. If he thinks he's found me, he'll come alone because he'll want to be the hero in his own story. The one who rescued his girlfriend from whatever villain he's convinced himself I ran away with. You don't know that, Roman said. I lived with him for 2 years. I know exactly how he thinks. She turned to Victor. If we do this, can you guarantee he won't touch me? I can guarantee he won't leave the room alive if he tries. Roman's hands curled into fists. No, we're not using you as bait. It's not your decision, Elara said, and watched his eyes flash with something between anger and fear. This is my life, my choice, and I'm choosing to stop running. By walking into a trap? By taking control of the situation instead of waiting for it to control me. She looked at Victor. How would it work? Victor glanced at Roman, who gave a tight nod. Permission granted, barely. We leak your location through Derek Lim's investigation, Victor explained. Make it look like he stumbled onto something real. He tells Caleb, Caleb comes to get you. We set the meeting in one of our properties, somewhere defensible, somewhere we can control access and exits. You're never in actual danger because we'll have a dozen men on site, all armed, all loyal. And then what? Elara asked. Then Roman delivers a message that makes Caleb understand the cost of continuing this pursuit. You mean you'll hurt him? Victor's expression didn't change. I mean, we'll make sure he understands that touching you again, even thinking about touching you, will be the last mistake he ever makes. Elara looked at Roman, who was staring at the floor, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. Say something, she said. I think it's a terrible idea. He finally met her eyes. I think it puts you in danger unnecessarily. I think there are 100 ways it could go wrong. And I think if something happens to you, I'll never forgive myself. But you'll do it. If that's what you want, yes. But you need to understand what you're asking. Once we start this, there's no going back. Caleb will know where you are, who you're with, and that will make you a target for anyone who wants to get to me. I'm already a target, Elara said. At least this way, I'm a target who's fighting back. Roman studied her for a long moment, and she saw the exact second he made his decision. His shoulders relaxed fractionally, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute commitment. All right, we do this your way, but we do it on my terms. Victor, set it up for 72 hours from now. I want every angle covered, every contingency planned. Elara doesn't step into that room until I'm satisfied we can pull her out safely if things go sideways. Understood. Victor left with his folder and his tablet, and Elara was alone with Roman in a silence that felt heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. You're angry, she said finally. I'm terrified. Roman moved to the windows, his usual refuge. I've orchestrated hostile takeovers, survived 3 attempts on my life, and negotiated peace between families that have been at war for generations. But the thought of you in the same room as that man makes my blood run cold. Why? She moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. Why do you care so much? Because you matter to me. He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his eyes stole her breath. I can't explain it. I don't understand it. But from the moment I caught you in that restaurant, something shifted. And now the idea of losing you, of anything happening to you, is worse than anything I've faced in this life. Elara reached out and touched his face, her fingers tracing the scar on his cheekbone. How did you get this? A knife fight when I was 17. The other guy didn't walk away. Were you scared? Terrified. But I learned that fear doesn't mean you stop fighting. It means you fight smarter. Then trust me to fight smart now. She let her hand fall. I need to do this, Roman. I need to face him. Not because I'm brave, but because I'm tired of being broken. He caught her hand and pressed it to his chest, over his heart. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Victor came and went with updates. Derek Lim had been fed carefully curated information that would lead him to a warehouse in Red Hook, one of Roman's legitimate holdings that happened to be empty for renovations. Caleb had taken the bait exactly as predicted, responding to Derek's message within an hour. The meeting was set for Friday at midnight, chosen because Caleb had demanded it be late enough that no one would see him rescuing Elara. Dr. Chen returned to check her ribs and declared them healing well enough for normal activity, though he advised against anything strenuous. He didn't ask what she was planning, but the look he gave Roman suggested he knew and disapproved. Maria fussed over her like a mother hen, making sure she ate 3 meals a day, insisting she rest, quietly leaving books and magazines in the library, like she understood Elara needed distraction from her own thoughts. And Roman? Roman was everywhere and nowhere. He'd disappear for hours, then return and station himself in whatever room she occupied, working on his laptop or making phone calls in that low, dangerous voice that made men on the other end scramble to obey. He didn't touch her again after that moment in the living room, but his presence was a constant pressure, a reminder that she wasn't alone even when she wanted to be. On Thursday night, with less than 24 hours until the meeting, Elara found herself unable to sleep. She wandered through the penthouse in bare feet and borrowed pajamas, ending up in the library where Roman sat in the leather chair with a glass of whiskey and a book he wasn't reading. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking up. "Can you?" "Haven't tried yet." He set down the book and gestured to the second chair. "Sit. Talk to me." Elara sat, curling her legs under her. "What if I freeze? What if I see him and just shut down?" "Then I step in and handle it." "That defeats the whole purpose." "The purpose is to end this. Whether you confront him or I do doesn't change the outcome." "It changes everything," Elara said. "If you do it, I'm still the victim. If I do it, I'm taking my power back." Roman finally looked at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who survived 2 years of hell and came out the other side still capable of compassion. You told me not to kill him, Elara. After everything he did to you, you still chose mercy. That's not weakness. That's strength most people don't have. It doesn't feel like strength. It never does. Strength feels like fear you push through anyway." She let that settle, turning it over in her mind. What happens after tomorrow? After we've sent our message and Caleb backs off? Assuming he backs off. What happens to this? She gestured between them. What do you want to happen? I don't know. I don't even know what this is. Roman set down his whiskey and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'll tell you what it's not. It's not me trying to own you. It's not me expecting something in return for protection. It's not me looking for gratitude or obedience or any of the things men like Caleb want. Then what is it? Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. I've spent 15 years building an empire on calculated decisions and controlled emotion. I don't do impulsive. I don't do vulnerable. But you walked into my life bleeding and afraid, and suddenly all those carefully maintained walls feel like prison bars instead of protection. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. That scares you. Terrifies me. Because people in my world don't get happy endings. They get compromises and negotiated truces, and the occasional moment of peace between crises. And you deserve better than that. Maybe I don't want better. Maybe I just want real. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Roman stood and moved to where she sat, then crouched in front of her chair so they were eye level. If we do this, if we explore whatever this is between us, you need to understand what you're signing up for. My life is complicated, dangerous. There will be threats you don't see coming, enemies who will try to use you against me, moments when you'll wish you'd never met me. As opposed to what? Going back to my apartment alone, Wondering when Caleb will break down my door? At least with you, I know the danger I'm facing. Do you? Roman's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her lower lip. Because I'm not sure I do. The kiss happened before either of them decided it should. One moment they were staring at each other, the next his mouth was on hers. Not gentle, not careful, but consuming. Alara gasped, and he deepened the kiss, his hand sliding into her hair, pulling her closer. She tasted whiskey and want and something darker, something that made her think of midnight promises and beautiful disasters. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Roman pressed his forehead to hers. "This is a terrible idea," he murmured. "I know. You should run, far and fast." "I'm done running." He kissed her again, softer this time, like he was memorizing the shape of her mouth. Then he pulled back and stood, putting distance between them with visible effort. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice rough. "We deal with Caleb tomorrow, and then we figure out the rest. If that's what you want." "It is." Roman nodded and left the library without another word, and Alara sat in the chair with her heart racing and her lips still tingling, wondering if she'd just made the best or worst decision of her life. Friday arrived with gray skies and the kind of cold that seeped into bones. Alara spent the morning trying not to think about the evening, but her mind kept circling back to it like a tongue to a sore tooth. Victor arrived at noon with final logistics. The warehouse was ready, the team was in place, every possible variable had been accounted for. "He'll be expecting to find you alone," Victor said, pointing to a map of the warehouse on his tablet. "We'll have you in this room here, second floor, east side. It's got reinforced walls, 2 exits, and a clear line of sight for our people positioned above. The moment he enters, we'll be watching." "How many people?" Alara asked. 12. All armed, all ready to move on Roman's signal. And if Caleb brings backup? He won't. We've been monitoring his communications. He thinks Derek found you at a shelter in Red Hook. He's planning to go in alone, play the concerned boyfriend, convince you to come home. The familiar pattern made Alara's skin crawl. That was Caleb's specialty. The grand gesture, the public performance of caring while private reality was blood and bruises. What if he doesn't believe it, she asked. What if he suspects a trap? Then he won't show, and we'll implement Plan B. Which is? Victor's smile was cold. We bring the message to him instead. Roman appeared in the doorway dressed all in black, jeans, sweater, jacket that probably concealed multiple weapons. His hair was pulled back, making the angles of his face sharper, more severe. He looked like what he was, a man prepared for violence. "It's time," he said. The drive to Red Hook took 40 minutes through traffic that crawled and stopped. Alara sat in the back of a black SUV with Roman beside her, silent and tense. Victor drove, making small talk about nothing that mattered, clearly trying to ease the tension. The warehouse loomed out of the industrial landscape like a monument to decay, red brick gone dark with age, windows boarded, a chain-link fence surrounding the property. Victor pulled through a gate that opened automatically, then around to a loading dock where 2 more SUVs were already parked. Men in dark clothes moved with purpose, checking weapons, speaking into earpieces, creating a perimeter. They all deferred to Roman with nods and quiet acknowledgments, and Alara realized she was seeing him in his element now, not the man who'd stayed up all night watching her sleep, but the crime lord who commanded absolute loyalty. Inside, the warehouse was exactly what she'd expected. Concrete floors, exposed beams, empty except for some construction equipment pushed against the walls. Metal stairs led to a second-floor catwalk that ran the perimeter. Victor led them up to a room that had probably been an office once, now stripped bare except for a single chair positioned in the center. "This is where you'll wait," Victor said. "He'll come up those stairs, see you through the doorway. Our people will be here, here, and here." He pointed to positions on the catwalk. "You'll never be alone with him. If he makes a move, we respond." "And if I want to talk to him, actually talk?" Roman, who'd been silent since they arrived, finally spoke. "Then you talk. But the moment he threatens you, the moment he tries to touch you, this conversation ends. Non-negotiable." Alara nodded and moved to the chair. It was cold steel, uncomfortable, perfect for what was coming. She sat and folded her hands in her lap, trying to channel calm she didn't feel. Roman crouched in front of her, his hands covering hers. "You don't have to do this." We can still walk away, handle it differently. I'm not walking away. Then know that I'm right there. He nodded toward a doorway behind her, 10 feet away. If you need me, I know. He stood and pressed a kiss to the top of her head, then disappeared into the shadows. Victor followed, and suddenly Alara was alone in a room that smelled like concrete dust and abandonment, waiting for the man who'd tried to destroy her to walk through the door. Time moved strangely. She heard footsteps on the stairs, heavy, confident, exactly like Caleb's. Heard the creak of the catwalk metal, saw his shadow fall across the doorway before she saw him. And then there he was. Caleb Rourke looked exactly the same. 6'2", broad-shouldered, with sandy hair styled carefully, and blue eyes that could shift from charming to cold in a heartbeat. He wore khakis and a button-down under a wool coat, looking like someone who'd just left the office. Looking normal, safe, the kind of man mothers trusted and strangers smiled at. Looking nothing like the monster who'd put her in the hospital twice. He stopped in the doorway, his face cycling through surprise, relief, and something that might have been love if you didn't know better. Alara. Her name in his mouth made her skin crawl. Thank God. I've been so worried. She said nothing, just looked at him. Are you okay? He took a step into the room. When you disappeared, I thought, I didn't know what to think. I've been going crazy trying to find you. Stop. The single word froze him mid-step. Just stop, Caleb. Stop pretending this is a rescue. Stop pretending you were worried about anything except losing control of me. His expression shifted, the mask cracking. That's not fair. You know I love you. You don't love me. You've never loved me. You owned me. There's a difference. Baby, listen. Don't call me that. Alara stood, her hand shaking but her voice steady. Don't call me baby or honey or any of those things you used to say right before you hit me. Caleb's face flushed. I never... You're exaggerating. I got angry sometimes, sure, but I never... You put me in the hospital, twice. The first time you told the doctor I fell downstairs. The second time you said I got mugged. Do you even remember what you actually did? Or have you rewritten history so many times you believe your own lies? You're confused. This place, whoever brought you here, they're messing with your head. Come home. We'll talk about this properly. I'm not going anywhere with you. Caleb's jaw tightened, and there it was. The flash of rage she knew too well. You don't get to make that decision. You're my girlfriend. We live together. You don't just walk out in the middle of the night. You mean I don't get to escape after you beat me unconscious? After I woke up bleeding and knew the next time might be the time you killed me? I would never kill you. The shout echoed through the warehouse. I would never... You're being dramatic. You always do this, blow things out of proportion. Show me your hand, Caleb. He blinked. What? Your right hand, show it to me. Slowly, confused, he held up his hand. The knuckles were bruised, scraped, recent. You did that hitting me 5 days ago, Alara said quietly. But you don't even remember, do you? It was just another Tuesday night to you. Caleb lowered his hand, his expression darkening. You're trying to make me the villain. I'm not the villain here. I'm the one who took care of you, who paid for everything, who used money as a cage and care as control. Alara took a breath. I'm done, Caleb. It's over. And if you come looking for me again, if you try to contact me, if you so much as think about finding me, you will regret it. He laughed, and the sound was ugly. Is that a threat? Did whoever's holding you here teach you to make threats? Because, sweetheart, you don't have the spine for it. She doesn't have to. Roman stepped out of the shadows, and the transformation on Caleb's face would have been funny if it weren't so terrifying. Confusion morphing into recognition, morphing into fear. You, Caleb breathed. You're Roman DeLuca, and you're the man who put his hands on what's mine. Roman's voice was soft, lethal. Did you really think you could walk into my city, hurt someone under my protection, and face no consequences? Caleb's eyes darted between Roman and Alara. Your protection? She's my girlfriend. She's nothing to you anymore. And you're going to leave this warehouse with a very clear understanding of what happens if you forget that. Caleb took a step back. You can't threaten me. I'll go to the police and tell them what? That you came to an abandoned warehouse looking for the woman you've been beating for 2 years, that you hired a private investigator to track her down after she fled in fear for her life? Please, make that call. I'd love to see how it plays out. This is kidnapping. She's here against her will. I'm here because I choose to be, Alara said, and the certainty in her own voice surprised her. Because Roman gave me something you never did, a choice, and I'm choosing to stay. Caleb's face twisted with rage. You think you love him? You think this psychopath is better than me? He's a criminal, Alara. He's killed people. So have you. You just did it slowly, with fists instead of bullets. The words hung in the air like a verdict, and Alara watched something break in Caleb's expression, the last pretense of concern, the final threat of the performance. Fine, he spat. You want to be with him? You deserve each other. Enjoy your life with a monster. He turned to leave, and Roman's hand shot out, gripping Caleb's shoulder hard enough to make him gasp. Not yet. We're not done. And in that moment, with Roman's eyes gone cold and Caleb's breath coming fast and terrified, Alara realized they'd crossed a line. There was no going back from this, no pretending they could resolve this peacefully. No. Roman's grip on Caleb's shoulder tightened until the bones ground together audibly, and Caleb's face went white with pain. Victor emerged from the opposite shadow, flanked by two men Alara hadn't seen before, both armed, both wearing expressions that suggested violence was more routine than breathing. Here's what's going to happen, Roman said, his voice so calm it was terrifying. You're going to listen very carefully to what I tell you, and then you're going to walk out of here and disappear from Alara's life completely, permanently. Do you understand? Caleb tried to pull away, but Roman's grip was iron. You're insane. Do you understand? Roman's voice dropped even lower, and something in the tone made every man in the room straighten involuntarily. Yes, Caleb gasped. Yes, I understand. Good. Roman released him with enough force that Caleb stumbled. You're going to delete her number, forget her address, forget her name. If you see her on the street, you're going to cross to the other side and keep walking. If someone mentions her in conversation, you're going to pretend you've never heard of her. She no longer exists in your world. Fine, whatever. I don't want anything to do with her anyway. I'm not finished. Roman took a step forward and Caleb instinctively backed up until he hit the wall. If you violate this agreement, if I hear you've so much as breathed her name, you won't get a warning. You won't get a second chance. You'll simply cease to exist. And before you think about going to the police or the media or anyone else with some story about intimidation, remember that I have 2 years of medical records documenting what you did to her. Emergency room visits. Police reports that were filed and mysteriously disappeared. Photographs taken by doctors who were concerned enough to create evidence even when she wouldn't press charges. Caleb's face had gone from white to gray. That's impossible. Those records are sealed. Nothing is sealed from me. Roman's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. I own this city in ways you can't begin to comprehend. Judges, prosecutors, police captains, they all owe me favors. And if you become a problem, I will call in every single one of those favors to bury you so deep that no one will remember you existed. This is illegal. So is putting your hands on her. Roman gestured to Victor, who produced a folder and handed it to Caleb. That's a copy of everything we have. Read it. Understand what we can do to you with a single phone call. And then ask yourself if trying to maintain some claim on Alara is really worth spending the next 20 years in a cell with men who don't take kindly to domestic abusers. Caleb opened the folder with shaking hands. Alara watched his face as he flipped through pages. Medical records she'd forgotten about, photographs she'd never seen, incident reports from neighbors who'd called the police after hearing screaming, a complete history of his systematic destruction of her, documented and irrefutable. You can't use this, Caleb said, but his voice was hollow. It's inadmissible. Obtained illegally. I don't need it to be admissible. I just need it to exist. One anonymous tip to the right journalist, one post on the right online forum, and your life as you know it ends. Your job, your reputation, your future, all gone. Roman crossed his arms. But I'm a reasonable man. I'm giving you a choice. Walk away now, tonight, and none of this ever sees the light of day. Continue to be a problem, and I'll make sure it's the only thing anyone knows about you. Alara watched Caleb's face cycle through emotions. Rage, fear, calculation. She knew that look. He was trying to find an angle, a way to turn this to his advantage. It was what he did, what he'd always done. You think you're protecting her, Caleb said, looking at Roman but speaking to Alara. But you have no idea what you've gotten into. He's using you. Men like him don't protect anyone. They collect assets, and when you're no longer useful, Whoopa. Enough! Alara's voice cut through the warehouse like a blade. She moved to stand beside Roman, close enough that their shoulders touched. I spent 2 years listening to you tell me who I was, what I wanted, how I should feel. I'm done. Whatever Roman is or isn't, he's given me something you never could, the choice to be here or not. Some choice, Caleb sneered. You're terrified of me, so you run to someone worse. That's not freedom, Alara. That's just a prettier cage. Maybe, but at least this cage doesn't come with bruises. The words landed like a slap. Caleb's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists, and there it was, the violence he couldn't quite contain even when surrounded by armed men. Victor moved slightly, his hand drifting toward his jacket, and Caleb seemed to remember where he was. Fine, he said, throwing the folder onto the ground. Papers scattered across the concrete. Keep her. She was never worth the trouble anyway. He turned and walked toward the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Alara felt something in her chest unclench slightly, a knot of tension she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it was there. But then Caleb stopped at the top of the stairs and turned back, and the expression on his face made her blood freeze. You should ask him, Caleb said, looking directly at Alara. Ask Roman why he was really at that restaurant the night you showed up. Roman went very still beside her. What are you talking about? Alara asked. Caleb's smile was ugly, triumphant. You think it was coincidence? You think you just happened to stumble into the one place in Manhattan where the most powerful crime lord in the city was having dinner? Ask him. Ask him about the photographs. Get out, Roman said, his voice deadly quiet. Ask him about the surveillance, about how he's known who you were for weeks before you ever walked through those doors. I said get out. But Alara was already turning to Roman, her heart hammering. What is he talking about? Roman's expression was carved from stone. He's lying, trying to drive a wedge between us before he leaves. Then it should be easy to deny. Caleb's voice was light, almost cheerful. Tell her you didn't have her followed. Tell her you didn't know exactly who she was and who she was running from before you ever caught her. Tell her it was all just a beautiful coincidence. Alara looked at Roman, searching his face for the denial that didn't come. Roman? Not here, Roman said tightly. Not like this. So it's true. The words came out flat, dead. You knew. It's more complicated than that. Did you know who I was before I walked into that restaurant? The pause was half a second too long. Yes. The warehouse spun. Alara grabbed the wall for support, her breath coming in short gasps. How long? Alara, how long have you been watching me? Roman's jaw worked. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. While she'd been trying to save money, planning her escape, living in constant terror, he'd known. He'd been watching. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you? Because I needed to know what I was dealing with before I got involved. Roman took a step toward her, and she flinched back. His face spasmed with something that might have been pain. I had reports of a woman being abused in my territory. My territory, Alara. That makes it my responsibility. So I had her watched, had her situation assessed. And when I saw what was happening, what he was doing to you, I waited for an opportunity to help. You waited. The laugh that escaped her was broken glass. You watched him beat me and you waited for the right opportunity? I couldn't just break down your door and drag you out. You would have run, or worse, you would have defended him, gone back to him. I've seen it 100 times, so I waited until you made the choice to leave on your own. Except it wasn't my choice, was it? You engineered it? The restaurant being open late, the doors unlocked. The doors are always unlocked. I own the place. And yes, I made sure my people knew to let you in if you showed up. But I didn't make you run, Alara. I didn't put that dress on you or those bruises on your face. I just made sure that when you finally found the courage to leave, you'd have somewhere safe to go. Caleb was laughing now, a sound like breaking bottles. Oh, this is beautiful. This is perfect. You thought he was your savior, didn't you? Your knight in shining armor. But he's just another man trying to control you. At least I was honest about it. Shut your mouth, Victor said, moving toward Caleb with purpose. But Caleb was already backing down the stairs, his hands raised in mock surrender. I'm leaving. I'm gone. But Alara, sweetheart, when you figure out that you've just traded one monster for another, don't come crying to me. His footsteps echoed down the stairs, across the warehouse floor, and then silence crashed down like a physical weight. Alara couldn't look at Roman, couldn't bear to see whatever expression was on his face. She stared at the scattered papers on the floor, her medical history, her trauma, her suffering, all documented and filed and used as leverage in someone else's game. I need to leave, she said quietly. Alara, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You lied to me. You let me think. Her voice broke. You let me think it was chance, that you saw me and just decided to help because you're some kind of good person underneath all the violence. But it was calculated. It was a strategy. It was both. Roman's voice was raw in a way she'd never heard before. Yes, I knew who you were. Yes, I had you watched. But the moment I caught you, the moment I looked into your eyes and saw all that fear and courage mixed together, it stopped being strategy. It became personal. How convenient that you can't prove that. How do you want me to prove it? What can I possibly say that will make you believe me? Nothing. Alara finally looked at him, and the devastation in his eyes almost broke her resolve. Almost. You should have told me. The first night, the second, any time in the last week, you should have told me the truth. And if I'd said, by the way, I've had people following you for 3 weeks, documenting your abuse, waiting for you to run, would you have stayed? No. Exactly. So I made a choice. I chose to let you heal, let you feel safe, before burdening you with information that would make you question everything. That wasn't your choice to make, the shout echoed through the warehouse. I've had enough of men making choices for me because they think they know better. You're no different than Caleb. You just have better PR. The comparison landed like a physical blow. Roman actually staggered back a step, his face going white. Don't, he said hoarsely. Don't compare me to him. I would never. Hurt me? You're hurting me right now. You're hurting me by taking away my agency, by making me doubt every moment of the last week. Was any of it real, Roman? The conversations, the protection, She couldn't finish. Couldn't say the word kiss when her entire world was crumbling. All of it was real. Roman moved toward her, his hands out like he was approaching a wounded animal. Every word, every moment. The surveillance was reconnaissance. What happened after you arrived? What's happening between us? That's real. I don't believe you. The words hung in the air like a sentence, and Alara watched Roman's face close off, all the vulnerability bleeding away until he was the crime lord again, cold, controlled, untouchable. Then there's nothing more to say. His voice was flat. Victor will take you anywhere you want to go. You have money. I've set up an account in your name, enough to start over wherever you choose. You're not obligated to stay. Just like that? I say I don't believe you and you're ready to throw me out? I'm not throwing you out. I'm giving you the choice I should have given you from the beginning. Stay or go. Believe me or don't. But don't stay because you're afraid or because you think you owe me. Stay because you want to. Alara looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who'd stayed up all night watching her sleep, who'd kissed her like she was precious, who'd threatened to kill anyone who touched her. The man who'd also lied by omission, manipulated circumstances, and watched her suffer for 3 weeks before intervening. Which version was real? Or were they both real, and that was the problem? I need time, she said finally. I need to think. Roman nodded once, sharp and final. Victor will drive you back to the penthouse. Your room is still yours. Take all the time you need. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows the same way he'd emerged from them. And Alara was left standing in an empty warehouse surrounded by evidence of her own victimhood, wondering how she'd gotten from Caleb's fists to Roman's protection to this, alone again, but this time with the weight of 2 different betrayals crushing her chest. Victor approached carefully, his expression neutral, but his eyes sympathetic. Ready to go? Was it true? Everything Caleb said? Victor hesitated, then nodded. The surveillance, yes. Roman had you watched, but I don't want to hear excuses. It's not an excuse, it's context. He saw what was happening to you and he... Victor stopped, shook his head. That's not my story to tell. Come on, let's get you out of here. The drive back to this penthouse was silent. Victor tried once to make conversation, then gave up and focused on traffic. Alara stared out the window at the city lights blurring past and tried to organize her thoughts into something coherent. Roman had lied, or at least he'd withheld truth, which was the same thing. But was it the same as Caleb's lies? Caleb lied to maintain control, to rewrite reality, to make her doubt her own perceptions. Roman had lied to, what? Protect her? Protect himself? Ensure she'd trust him enough to stay? The answer mattered, but she couldn't untangle it from the hurt. Back at the penthouse, she went straight to her room and closed the door. Maria appeared 20 minutes later with tea and sandwiches, both of which went untouched. The sky darkened outside her window, and Alara lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, trying to decide what she felt. Betrayed, definitely. Angry, absolutely. But underneath that was something else. A bone-deep weariness with being someone's project. Caleb's project to control, Roman's project to save. When did she get to just be a person instead of a problem to solve? Somewhere around midnight, her phone buzzed. She'd forgotten she even had one. Roman had given it to her days ago, a sleek device with only a few numbers programmed in. His was at the top of the list. The text was short. "I'm sorry." She stared at the words until they blurred. Sorry for lying? Sorry for watching her? Sorry for catching her that night in the restaurant, setting all of this in motion? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She typed and deleted half a dozen responses before settling on. For which part? The reply came immediately. All of it? None of it. I don't know anymore. That's not good enough. I know. She waited for more, but nothing came. Finally, she typed, Why didn't you intervene sooner? If you saw what he was doing, why did you wait? The pause before his response was longer this time. When the phone buzzed, she almost didn't want to read it, because I've learned that people don't change until they're ready. I could have removed you from that situation by force, but you would have gone back to him the first chance you got. I've seen it happen. The only way out that sticks is the one you choose yourself. So you let him keep hurting me. Yes. And I will regret that for the rest of my life. But I would regret you going back to him more. Alara threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen intact. Of course it was intact. Roman probably had it specially reinforced because he thought of everything, planned for every contingency, controlled every variable. She grabbed a pillow and screamed into it until her throat was raw. When the rage finally burned itself out, she retrieved the phone. No new messages. She typed, I don't know if I can forgive this. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking you not to leave until you're sure that's what you want. Why do you care? Because in a life built on calculated decisions and controlled outcomes, you're the first thing that's felt real in 15 years. And I'm not ready to lose that. The honesty in the words made her chest ache. She wanted to throw the phone again, wanted to scream at him that honesty now didn't make up for lies before. But she was so tired of being angry, so exhausted from carrying rage like armor. I need time, she typed. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. She set the phone down and curled up on the bed, still fully dressed, and closed her eyes. Sleep didn't come for a long time, and when it did, she dreamed of falling. Endless falling with no one to catch her, just air and terror and the certainty of impact. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, she thought it was a normal morning, that the last 12 hours had been a nightmare. Then she sat up and saw her reflection in the mirror, eyes red from crying, hair tangled, still wearing yesterday's clothes, and reality crashed back. There was a knock on the door. Alara, may I come in? Maria's voice, safe, neutral. Yes. Maria entered with a tray, coffee, fruit, toast, and a small vase with a single white rose. She set it on the nightstand and smiled gently. Mr. DeLuca left early this morning. He said to tell you that the penthouse is yours for as long as you want it, whether he's here or not. Where did he go? He didn't say, but Victor mentioned something about handling business in Brooklyn. Maria hesitated, then added, He looked terrible, if that helps, like he hadn't slept. It doesn't help. No, I didn't think it would. Maria moved to the windows and pulled back the curtains fully, letting in light that made Alara wince. For what it's worth, I've worked for Roman for 8 years. I've seen him make difficult choices, seen him do questionable things in the name of protecting people, but I've never seen him care about someone the way he cares about you. He has a funny way of showing it. He's a man who spent his entire adult life trusting no one, relying on control and strategy to survive. You can't expect him to suddenly know how to be vulnerable just because he wants to. I can expect honesty. Can you? After 2 years with someone who lied to your face while hurting you, would you have believed anything Roman said if he'd led with, "I've been watching you"? The question landed hard. Alara wanted to say yes, wanted to believe she would have seen the difference between Caleb's manipulation and Roman's protection. But honestly, she probably would have run. That doesn't make it right, she said quietly. No, it doesn't. But it might make it understandable. Maria moved toward the door, then paused. He left something for you, on his desk in the office. He said you'd know what to do with it. After Maria left, Alara forced herself to shower and change into clean clothes, jeans and a sweater that felt like armor. The coffee had gone cold, but she drank it anyway, needing the caffeine to cut through the fog in her head. The office was exactly as she remembered. Massive desk, wall of windows, a view of Manhattan that stretched to infinity. On the desk was a single manila envelope with her name written in Roman's sharp, precise handwriting. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Surveillance photos, clearly. Taken from a distance, grainy. The kind that came from hidden cameras and telephoto lenses. They showed her leaving the apartment she'd shared with Caleb, going to the small coffee shop on the corner, walking through the park. In every single one, she looked haunted. Shoulders hunched, eyes down, moving through the world like she was trying not to be seen. There were also photographs of Caleb, coming and going, always looking normal, always smiling, the perfect boyfriend. Except there was one photo, just one, that showed him grabbing her arm in the doorway of their building, his face twisted with rage, her body already flinching away. Beneath the photos was a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. These are copies. The originals are in a safe deposit box along with all the other evidence we collected. I'm giving these to you because they belong to you, your story, your truth. What you do with them is entirely your choice. Destroy them, keep them, use them, whatever you need. I should have shown you these the first night. I should have told you everything. I thought I was protecting you by controlling the information, but I was really just protecting myself from the possibility that you'd leave if you knew the truth. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to understand that everything I did, the surveillance, the waiting, the intervention, was because I saw someone who deserved better, and I wanted to be the person who helped her get it. If you decide to leave, the account I mentioned is real. $200,000, accessible immediately, no strings attached. It's not payment. It's not a bribe. It's just insurance. So you never have to depend on anyone who might hurt you ever again. If you decide to stay, I'll spend every day proving that I can be trusted. Not because I want to control you, but because I want to deserve you. R. Alara read the note 3 times, then set it down carefully on the desk. $200,000. Enough to start over anywhere, be anyone. The freedom she'd been dreaming of for 2 years, handed to her on a silver platter. She picked up one of the photographs, the one of Caleb grabbing her arm. She remembered that day. He'd been angry because she'd come home 20 minutes late from the grocery store. The conversation had started in the hallway and ended with her locked in the bathroom for 3 hours while he raged outside. Looking at the photo now, she could see what Roman had seen. Could see the evidence of systematic abuse written in her body language, in the way she made herself small, in the terror captured in frozen pixels. He'd seen all of that, and instead of looking away, instead of deciding it wasn't his problem, he'd made it his mission to help her. The method was questionable, the execution was manipulative, but the intent was what Caleb had said it was: protection. The question was whether she could accept protection that came with surveillance, whether she could trust someone who'd lied by omission, even if the lies were meant to keep her safe. She was still standing there, photographs scattered across the desk, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Alara Vance? A woman's voice, professional, slightly accented. Who is this? My name is Detective Sarah Chen. I'm with the NYPD's Domestic Violence Unit. I received an anonymous tip this morning regarding your situation with Caleb Rourke, and I was hoping we could talk. Alara's blood went cold. An anonymous tip from who? I can't disclose that. but the tip included some very detailed information about sustained abuse, medical records, and potential criminal charges. I'd like to meet with you to discuss your options. I'm not interested in pressing charges. I understand, but if you just... I said I'm not interested. Elara ended the call and immediately dialed Roman's number. He answered on the first ring. Elara? Did you call the police? What? No, I told you I wouldn't. Then who did? Because I just got a call from a detective who has medical records and detailed information about Caleb. Information that only you would have. There was a pause then Roman swore under his breath. It wasn't me. But I know who it was. Stay there, I'm coming back. Roman, but he'd already hung up. 20 minutes later, the penthouse door slammed open and Roman stormed in, Victor right behind him. Both looked furious. Caleb made the call, Roman said without preamble. He went to the police this morning and filed a complaint against me for intimidation and harassment. Said I threatened him, showed him illegally obtained records, held him against his will at the warehouse. And in the process of making his complaint, he reluctantly mentioned your situation, painting himself as the concerned boyfriend who was trying to help you escape my influence. Elara felt the room tilt. He's trying to make me look like I'm being held here. Exactly. It's a smart play, actually. He gets to look like the hero, puts me under investigation, and creates a situation where if you don't cooperate with the police, it looks like I'm preventing you from doing so. This is insane. This is Caleb realizing he's cornered and lashing out with the only weapon he has left, the law. Roman paced to the windows, his hands clenched into fists. The detective who called you is legitimate. I've already confirmed it, which means we have a problem. What kind of problem? Victor answered. The kind where if you don't talk to her, she'll get a warrant. And if she gets a warrant, she'll find all the evidence we collected on Caleb. Evidence that was obtained through illegal surveillance, which makes it inadmissible and potentially gives Caleb grounds to sue. So what do I do? Roman turned from his window, and the look in his eyes was pure calculation. You have two choices. One, you talk to Detective Chen, tell her you're here voluntarily, that Caleb is lying, and deal with whatever questions she asks about your relationship with me. Two, you disappear. I can have you on a plane to anywhere in the world within 3 hours. New identity, new life, enough money to never look back. You want me to run? I want you to be safe. If you stay and talk to the police, this gets complicated. They'll want statements, evidence, court appearances. Caleb will fight every step, and he'll use his connections, and he has them, Elara, don't doubt that, to make this as painful as possible for everyone involved. And if I run, what happens to you? I'll handle the investigation. It won't stick. I've dealt with worse. That's not what I asked. Roman's jaw tightened. If you run, Caleb wins. He gets to paint himself as the victim, me as the villain, and you as the prize we were both fighting over. It'll eat at you, but you'll be safe. And if I stay? Then we fight, together. But I won't lie to you. It won't be easy. Caleb is vindictive and he's smart. He'll drag this out, make it ugly. And there's a very real possibility that some of what we did, the surveillance, the intimidation, will come back on both of us. Elara looked between Roman and Victor, both watching her with expressions that said they'd follow whatever decision she made. For the first time in years, maybe ever, she had actual power over her own life. The irony wasn't lost on her that it had taken two different men trying to control her future to finally give her the agency to choose it. I need to make a call, she said. She went to her room and closed the door, then pulled up Detective Chen's number. Her finger hovered over the callback button for a long moment before she pressed it. Detective Chen. This is Elara Vance. You called me earlier. Yes, thank you for calling back. I'll meet with you, but on my terms in a public place, and I'm bringing a lawyer. There was a pause, then. That's your right. When and where? Tomorrow, noon. There's a coffee shop on Fifth Avenue called Grind. Do you know it? I'll find it. And Miss Vance, you should know that Mr. Rourke has made some serious allegations. I need to verify your safety. I'm perfectly safe. And tomorrow, I'll prove it. She ended the call and sat on the edge of the bed, her heart hammering. She'd just committed to the fight, to standing up in public and calling Caleb a liar, to defending Roman even though part of her was still furious with him, to stepping into a war she'd been avoiding for 2 years. When she emerged from the bedroom, Roman was exactly where she'd left him, standing at the windows like a statue carved from shadow and tension. "I'm meeting with the detective tomorrow," she said. "I'm going to tell her the truth. All of it." Roman turned slowly. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." She moved to stand beside him, looking out at the city that had been the backdrop to her destruction and maybe, possibly, her rebuilding. "I need a lawyer. A good one. I'll have 3 of the best in the city available within an hour. And I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. No more surveillance or manipulation or deciding what I can handle. If we're doing this, if we're fighting Caleb together, then I need complete honesty, even when it's ugly." Roman studied her face for a long moment. "I can promise that." "Can you? Because your entire life is built on secrets and strategy. Can you really just turn that off? For you?" He reached out and touched her face, gentle and careful. "I'll learn how." It wasn't the emphatic yes she wanted, but it was honest. And right now, honesty was worth more than certainty. "Okay," she said. "Then we fight." Roman pulled her into his arms, and Alara let herself lean into the embrace, even though part of her was still angry, still hurt. Because Caleb was out there building a case against them both, and the detective would show up tomorrow with questions designed to expose every weakness. And the only way through was together. Even if together meant trusting someone who'd proven they couldn't be trusted completely. Even if together meant walking into a battle she wasn't sure they could win. They stood at the window as afternoon bled into evening, Manhattan glittering below them like a promise and a threat, and Alara wondered if she'd just made the bravest or most foolish decision of her life. Somewhere in the city, Caleb was planning his next move. And this time, she wasn't running from the fight. This time, she was running straight toward it. The lawyers arrived within the hour, exactly as Roman had promised. 3 of them, 2 men and a woman, all wearing suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, all carrying briefcases that probably contained enough legal firepower to dismantle a small government. They set up in Roman's dining room like a war council, spreading documents across the polished table, speaking in rapid-fire legalese that made Alara's head spin. The woman, Catherine Morrison, senior partner at Morrison and Associates, took the lead. She was maybe 50, with steel gray hair cut sharp at her shoulders and eyes that had seen every trick in the book and invented a few new ones. "Let me be clear about what we're dealing with," Catherine said, her voice crisp and businesslike. "Caleb Rourke has filed a formal complaint alleging intimidation, unlawful imprisonment, and harassment. He's also made statements to Detective Chen suggesting that you, Ms. Vance, are being held here against your will as part of some kind of revenge scheme against him." "That's insane," Alara said. "It's strategic. He's framing himself as the victim and Mr. DeLuca as the aggressor. The fact that he's willing to involve law enforcement suggests he's either desperate or very confident in his ability to control the narrative." Roman leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "What's our exposure?" "Moderate to severe, depending on what Ms. Vance says to Detective Chen and whether the detective decides to pursue the complaint." Catherine pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. "The surveillance is our biggest problem. Even though it was conducted on your behalf with good intentions, it's still illegal wiretapping and stalking under New York law. If Chen digs into that—" "She won't find anything," Victor interrupted from his position by the window. "The surveillance was off book. No paper trail, no digital footprint. Unless someone from our team talks, there's no evidence it ever happened." Catherine gave him a look that suggested she'd dealt with his type before. "That only works if everyone stays loyal, and loyalty has a price, especially when the NYPD starts applying pressure." "My people don't break," Victor said flatly. "Everyone breaks eventually. It's just a matter of finding the right pressure point." Catherine turned back to Alara. "Which is why we need to control the narrative before Chen has a chance to build a case. Tomorrow's meeting is crucial. You'll tell her that you left Caleb of your own volition, that you sought shelter with Mr. DeLuca because you knew him through mutual acquaintances, and that you're staying here voluntarily while you figure out your next steps." "That's not entirely true," Alara said. "It's true enough. The key is to stick to facts that can't be disputed and avoid giving her ammunition to use against you or Mr. DeLuca. She'll push. She'll try to find inconsistencies. Don't let her rattle you." "And if she asks about the warehouse? About what happened with Caleb last night?" Catherine's expression hardened. "You were never at any warehouse. You don't know what Mr. Rourke is talking about. If he claims otherwise, he's fabricating stories to make himself look sympathetic. So I lie. You protect yourself. There's a difference. Alara looked at Roman, who'd been silent throughout most of the discussion. His face was a mask, but she could see the tension in the set of his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. What do you think? She asked him. I think Catherine's right. Chen will be looking for cracks in your story. Don't give her any. Even if that means lying? Even then. Because the truth, the complete, unvarnished truth, will bury both of us. The brutal honesty of it should have bothered her more than it did, but Alara was starting to understand the rules of Roman's world. Truth was a weapon, and sometimes the only way to survive was to control who got to wield it. They spent the next 3 hours rehearsing. Catherine played Detective Chen, firing questions designed to trip Alara up, probing for weaknesses in her story. By the time they finished, Alara's head was pounding, and her throat was raw from repeating the same careful phrases over and over. When the lawyers finally left, promising to be at the coffee shop an hour before the meeting to prep one more time, Alara collapsed onto the couch and closed her eyes. You did well, Roman said quietly. I feel like I'm preparing for a performance instead of telling the truth. Because you are. The truth is complicated. The law prefers simple narratives with clear villains and victims. We're giving them what they need to hear. Alara opened her eyes and looked at him. He'd moved to his usual position at the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. Do you ever get tired of it? The calculations, the strategy, the constant manipulation? Every day. The admission surprised her. Then why do you keep doing it? Because it's the only world I know how to navigate. I was 17 when my father died and left me his empire. I had a choice. Learn to survive in a world built on violence and lies, or die. I chose survival. And somewhere along the way, survival became who I am. That's bleak. That's realistic. He turned to face her. But you make me want to be something else. Someone else. And I don't know if that's possible, but I'm willing to try. Before Alara could respond, her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She answered warily. Hello? Alara. Caleb's voice, smooth and familiar and utterly unwelcome. We need to talk. She sat up straight, her heart hammering. Roman crossed the room in 3 strides, his hand out for the phone. She shook her head and put it on speaker. We have nothing to talk about, she said. I disagree. I think we have quite a lot to discuss, like why you're letting that criminal convince you to lie to the police. I'm not lying about anything. No? So when you meet with Detective Chen tomorrow, you're going to tell her the truth? About how DeLuca had me followed, threatened me, showed me illegally obtained evidence? About how he's been holding you in his penthouse like some kind of trophy? I'm here by choice. Caleb laughed, and the sound made her skin crawl. Keep telling yourself that. But we both know the truth. You ran from me straight into the arms of someone worse. At least I never pretended to be anything other than what I am. A violent abuser? The words came out sharp, cutting. Yeah, Caleb, you were honest about that. Brutally honest. The line went quiet for a moment. When Caleb spoke again, his voice had gone cold. I'm giving you one chance to do the right thing. Tell the detective the truth. All of it. Tell her that DeLuca orchestrated this whole thing, that he manipulated you, that you're afraid of what he'll do if you don't cooperate, and I'll make sure the charges against you are dropped. Charges against me? I haven't been charged with anything. Not yet. But when this investigation really gets going, when they start looking into DeLuca's operation and everyone connected to it, you think you'll come out clean? You're living in his home, eating his food, wearing clothes he bought you. You're an accomplice, Alara, and unless you cooperate, you're going down with him. Roman's expression had gone deadly still, his eyes fixed on the phone like he could reach through it and strangle Caleb with his bare hands. Go to hell, Alara said. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to control me. Again. Like always, but I'm done being controlled. She stood, adrenaline flooding her system. You want to threaten me with legal consequences? Fine, bring it, because I'd rather go down fighting than spend one more second under your thumb. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was wasting 2 years believing you could change, but I'm done making mistakes. And I'm done with you. She ended the call and immediately blocked the number, her hands shaking so hard she almost dropped the phone. Roman was at her side instantly, his hands on her shoulders, grounding her. Breathe, you're okay. He's going to destroy us, Alara said, her voice cracking. He's going to keep pushing until we break or until the police find something they can use against you. Let him push. We push back harder. How? We're already lying to the police, covering up illegal surveillance, pretending last night never happened. How much harder can we push before it all comes crashing down? Roman's grip on her shoulders tightened. You listen to me. Caleb Rourke is a coward who's used to getting his way through intimidation and violence, but he's never faced someone like me, and he's never had to contend with someone like you, someone who's finally decided to fight back. He's scared, Alara. That call was desperation, not confidence. It didn't sound like desperation, because he's good at hiding it, but I can hear it. The way his voice went up half an octave when you told him to go to hell, the speed at which he threatened legal action, those are tells. He's panicking. So what do? We go to that meeting tomorrow. We tell our story. We make Chen believe that you're here voluntarily and that Caleb is a manipulative ex trying to weaponize the system against you. And then, he paused, something dark flickering across his face. And then what? And then I make sure Caleb understands that there are consequences for threatening what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have set off alarm bells. Instead, it made something in Alara's chest tighten with an emotion she didn't want to name. I'm not a possession, she said quietly. I know, but you're under my protection, and that means something in my world. It means I will burn down everything and everyone who tries to hurt you. Even if it means destroying yourself in the process? Roman's smile was sharp, dangerous. Especially then. That night, Alara barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Caleb's face, heard his voice making threats wrapped in concern. She got up twice to pace the room, once to stand at the window and watch the city that never seemed to sleep. Around 4 a.m, she gave up entirely and went to the kitchen for water. Roman was already there, sitting at the counter with a laptop and what looked like financial reports spread across the surface. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. He looked up, and in the dim light from the under-cabinet fixtures, she could see the exhaustion written in every line of his face. Too much to do. Chen won't just accept your statement at face value. She'll dig. So I'm making sure that when she digs, she finds exactly what I want her to find. Which is a legitimate businessman with philanthropic interests who happened to help a woman in distress, bank records showing donations to domestic violence shelters, board positions at women's advocacy groups, a history of supporting survivors. You're building a cover story. I'm reinforcing a narrative. There's a difference. He closed the laptop and rubbed his eyes. Every empire needs a public face. Mine has always been carefully curated to show power and success while hiding the machinery underneath. This is just an extension of that. Alara sat down across from him. Does it ever bother you, living a double life? It used to. Now it's just what I do. He reached across the counter and took her hand. But with you, I don't want to hide. I don't want to pretend. And that's terrifying because I've spent 15 years perfecting the performance. So don't perform. Not with me. What if the real me is worse than the performance? Then at least I'll know what I'm dealing with. Roman studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. All right, no more performance. Starting now. Starting now, she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence until dawn started to break over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. And when Roman finally stood to make coffee, Alara felt something shift between them, a fragile trust being built not on deception or strategy, but on the simple act of choosing honesty even when it was hard. The coffee shop on Fifth Avenue was exactly the kind of place where important conversations happened. Expensive, discreet, with booths that offered privacy and staff who knew how to be invisible. Catherine Morrison was already there when Alara arrived with Roman and Victor at 11:30, her briefcase open on the table, documents organized with military precision. Remember, Catherine said as they approached. Short answers. Don't elaborate unless asked. Don't volunteer information, and if I tap the table twice, you stop talking immediately. Got it. Roman squeezed her hand once, then moved to a booth 3 down with Victor. Close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to give the appearance of distance. Detective Sarah Chen arrived exactly at noon. She was younger than Alara expected, maybe 35, Asian, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a no-nonsense demeanor that suggested she'd heard every lie in the book. She wore slacks and a blazer over a white shirt, her badge clipped to her belt. Ms. Vance, thank you for meeting with me. Chen's handshake was firm, professional. She nodded to Catherine. Counselor. Detective. They sat, and Chen pulled out a small recorder. Do you mind if I record this conversation? Alara glanced at Catherine, who nodded slightly. That's fine, Alara said. Chen pressed record and stated the date, time, and participants for the record. Then she folded her hands on the table and looked directly at Alara. Let's start simple. Are you here of your own free will? Yes. Are you being coerced or threatened in any way? No. When did you leave your apartment and move in with Roman DeLuca? 8 days ago, December 19th. And why did you leave? This was the crucial question. Alara took a breath. Because my boyfriend at the time, Caleb Rourke, had become increasingly violent. I was afraid for my safety. Chen's expression didn't change, but Alara saw her eyes sharpen. How long had the violence been occurring? About 18 months. Did you ever report it to the police? No. Why not? Because I was scared and ashamed, and I didn't think anyone would believe me. Chen made a note on her pad. How did you end up at Mr. DeLuca's residence? This was where the story got tricky. Alara kept her voice steady. I knew of Roman through mutual acquaintances in the city. When I left that night, I was desperate and didn't have anywhere else to go. I showed up at a restaurant he owns, and he offered me shelter. Just like that? He saw you and offered you his penthouse? He saw that I was hurt and in trouble. He helped. That's very generous of him. Catherine tapped the table once. A warning. Roman is a generous person, Alara said carefully. Is that why you're staying with him? Gratitude? I'm staying with him because I feel safe there, and because we're... She hesitated, not sure how to label what they were. You're what? Chen pressed. We're close. We've become close. How close? Catherine tapped the table twice. Stop. That's irrelevant to your investigation, Detective, Catherine said smoothly. Ms. Vance's personal relationships are her own business. Chen smiled thinly. Actually, they're very relevant, because Mr. Rourke has suggested that Ms. Vance is being manipulated by Mr. DeLuca as part of some kind of scheme. That's ridiculous, Alara said. Is it? You left your boyfriend and within 24 hours you're living in a penthouse with one of the most powerful men in New York. From the outside, that looks suspicious. From the outside, it looks like a woman escaping abuse and finding help from someone who actually cares about her safety. Or it looks like a woman being used as a pawn in a power struggle between two men. The words hit like a slap. Alara felt her temper flare. I'm not a pawn. I'm not anyone's property. I made a choice to leave Caleb because he was hurting me. I made a choice to accept Roman's help because the alternative was homelessness or worse. Those were my choices, Detective, not theirs. Chen leaned back, studying her. Tell me about the warehouse. Alara's blood went cold. What warehouse? The one in Red Hook, where Mr. Rourke claims he was held against his will and threatened by Mr. DeLuca's associates. I don't know anything about that. You weren't there? No. Mr. Rourke seems to think you were. He says you were present when Mr. DeLuca threatened his life. Catherine tapped the table once. Careful. Mr. Rourke is lying, Alara said. I haven't seen or spoken to him since I left our apartment. That's interesting, because we have phone records showing multiple calls between his number and yours yesterday. Alara's mind raced. The blocked call. Damn it. He called me, she admitted. I didn't answer initially, but he kept calling from different numbers. Eventually, I picked up. He threatened me, tried to convince me to lie about Roman. I hung up and blocked him. What did he threaten you with? Legal consequences if I didn't cooperate with him. He said I'd be charged as an accomplice to whatever crimes he's accusing Roman of. Chen made another note. And you're certain you weren't at this warehouse? I'm certain. Then you won't mind if we verify your location for last evening? Catherine intervened smoothly. My client has answered your questions, Detective. If you want to pursue this further, you'll need to provide more specific allegations or obtain a warrant. Chen's smile was sharp. I'm just trying to establish the facts, Counselor. Mr. Rourke has made serious accusations. I need to verify Miss Vance's safety and determine whether those accusations have merit. And you've done that. Miss Vance is safe, here voluntarily, and has no knowledge of the alleged incident, unless you have evidence to the contrary. Actually, I do. Chen pulled out her phone and turned it toward Alara. On the screen was a photograph, grainy but recognizable. Alara standing in the warehouse office, Caleb visible in the doorway. Alara's heart stopped. This was sent to me anonymously this morning, Chen said, along with several others. They show you at the warehouse, they show Mr. DeLuca, and they show what appears to be a confrontation between Mr. DeLuca and Mr. Rourke. So I'll ask you again, were you at the warehouse last night? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Alara looked at Catherine, whose expression had gone carefully blank, looked past Chen to where Roman sat 3 booths down, his eyes locked on hers. This was it, the moment where the careful story they'd built collapsed under the weight of actual evidence. She could keep lying, could stick to the script and hope Chen didn't have enough to break it, or she could tell the truth and damn the consequences. Roman gave her the slightest nod. Your choice. Alara took a breath and made it. Yes, she said. I was there. Catherine's hand clenched on her pen, but she didn't interrupt. Why did you lie about it? Chen asked. Because I was scared. Because I thought if I admitted I was there, you'd twist it into something it wasn't. And what was it? A confrontation. Caleb tracked me down through a private investigator. Roman brought me there because it was a controlled environment where I could face him without being in actual danger. I wanted to tell him it was over. I wanted him to hear it from me and understand that I wasn't coming back. And Mr. DeLuca threatened him? Mr. DeLuca made it clear that if Caleb came near me again, there would be consequences. But he didn't hurt him. He didn't touch him. He protected me. By threatening a man in an abandoned warehouse? By making sure Caleb understood that I wasn't alone anymore, that someone was watching out for me. Chen studied the photograph on her phone. These pictures tell a different story. They show Mr. DeLuca with his hand on Mr. Rourke's shoulder. They show what appears to be a hostile situation. They support Mr. Rourke's claim of intimidation. They show a man defending someone he cares about from someone who hurt her for 2 years. Alara's voice rose despite her best efforts to stay calm. You want to know the truth, detective? The truth is that Caleb Rourke beat me regularly for 18 months. He put me in the hospital twice. He isolated me from my family and friends. He controlled every aspect of my life until I was too terrified to leave. And when I finally found the courage to run, he hired someone to hunt me down. So yes, Roman threatened him. And I'm glad he did. Because it's the first time in 2 years that someone has stood up for me instead of enabling my abuse. The words came out in a rush, fueled by months of suppressed rage and fear and pain. When she finished, she was breathing hard, her hands shaking on the table. Chen's expression had shifted slightly, not quite sympathy, but something closer to understanding. I need to see the medical records, Chen said quietly. Catherine pulled a folder from her briefcase and slid it across the table. We anticipated that request. Chen opened the folder and spent several minutes reviewing the contents. Her jaw tightened as she flipped through pages, and when she finally looked up, there was something new in her eyes. These are extensive, she said. They're 2 years of documented abuse, Catherine said. Fractures, contusions, lacerations, all explained away with lies at the time, but the pattern is clear. Chen closed the folder carefully. Ms. Vance, I need you to understand something. What Mr. DeLuca did, threatening Mr. Rourke even in the context of protecting you, is still potentially illegal. Intimidation, unlawful imprisonment if Mr. Rourke was prevented from leaving. He wasn't, Alara interrupted. He left when he wanted to leave. And if you're going to charge anyone with a crime, it should be Caleb, for what he did to me, not Roman for trying to keep me safe. That's not how the law works. Then maybe the law is broken. Chen sighed and tucked the folder back across the table to Catherine. I'm going to be honest with you, Ms. Vance. This case is complicated. Mr. Rourke's complaint has merit from a legal standpoint, but your medical records and your testimony about sustained abuse complicate things significantly. I need to consult with my supervisor and the DA's office before deciding how to proceed. What does that mean for Roman? It means the investigation continues. It means we'll be looking very carefully at everything that happened at that warehouse and everything that's happened since. And it means... She glanced toward Roman's booth. It means Mr. DeLuca should get very comfortable with the idea of being under scrutiny. She stood, collected her things, and paused before leaving. For what it's worth, I believe you about the abuse. I've seen enough cases to recognize the pattern, but that doesn't give Mr. DeLuca carte blanche to take the law into his own hands. Justice doesn't work that way. After she left, Catherine packed up her materials with brisk efficiency. Well, that could have gone better. What happens now? Alara asked. Now we wait. Chen will file her report, the DA will review it, and they'll decide whether to pursue charges against Mr. DeLuca. Given the medical evidence and your testimony, my guess is they'll push Caleb to drop his complaint in exchange for not filing charges related to the domestic violence. But she paused. If those photographs exist, if someone has more evidence of what happened at the warehouse, this gets significantly more complicated. Roman appeared at the booth, his expression unreadable. Who took the pictures? Someone who was there, Victor said, joining them, which means someone on our team. The implications of that hung in the air like poison. Find out who, Roman said, his voice deadly calm, and find out who they sent them to besides Chen. Victor nodded and left immediately. Catherine stood. I'll reach out to the DA's office, feel out their position. In the meantime, both of you should prepare for the possibility that this escalates. After she left, Alara and Roman sat in the booth in heavy silence. The coffee shop continued around them, people typing on laptops, couples talking in low voices, the hiss and grind of the espresso machine, all of it feeling surreal after what had just happened. I'm sorry, Alara said finally. For what? For telling her the truth, for not sticking to the script. Roman reached across the table and took her hand. Don't apologize for that. You did what you thought was right. I might have just made everything worse. Or you might have just saved us both. Chen was never going to believe the original story. Not with those photographs. At least now she knows the context. What if they charge you? Then I deal with it. I've dealt with worse. Because of me. Because of Caleb. And because I chose to help you. Those were my decisions, Alara. I own them. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She answered without thinking. You stupid bitch, Caleb's voice raw with rage. You actually told them about the medical records? You're going to destroy my life over some roughhousing? Roughhousing? Alara's voice rose. You put me in the hospital because you provoked me, because you kept pushing and pushing until I snapped, and now you're trying to make me the villain when all I ever did was try to help you. Roman snatched the phone from her hand. Listen very carefully, Rourke. You're going to hang up this phone, and you're never going to contact her again. Because if you do, if I hear your voice anywhere near her, I won't just threaten you next time. I'll end you. Do you understand? You think you're so powerful, Caleb spat. But you're going down. Those pictures are just the beginning. I have more. And when I'm done, you'll be in a cell and she'll have nowhere left to run. What pictures? Roman's voice had gone very quiet, very dangerous. Caleb laughed. All of them. The surveillance from your people. Weeks of footage showing your men following her, photographing her, documenting her every move. You think the police will care about her medical records when they see proof that you had her stalked for weeks before you rescued her? You're finished. He hung up. Roman stared at the phone for a long moment, then looked at Alara with an expression that made her blood run cold. We have a serious problem, he said. They returned to the penthouse to find Victor waiting with news that confirmed their worst fears. Someone on the surveillance team had kept copies of everything, photographs, videos, detailed logs of Alara's movements, and that someone had sold the evidence to Caleb for $50,000. Who? Roman's voice was ice. Name's Marcus Kane. He's been with us for 3 years. Clean record until now. Caleb approached him 2 days ago, offered him enough money to disappear. Kane took it. Where is he now? Gone. Cleaned out his apartment, turned off his phone. We're tracking him, but he had a head start. Roman's hands curled into fists. And the evidence? How much does Caleb have? Everything from the 3 weeks of surveillance, photographs, video footage, GPS tracking logs. Enough to prove we had Ms. Vance under watch long before she showed up at the restaurant. Alara felt the room spin. That's it then. When Chen sees that, when the DA sees that, they'll charge Roman with stalking and conspiracy, Catherine said. She'd followed them back to the penthouse, already on her phone with contacts in the DA's office. And depending on how aggressive they want to be, they could charge you as an accomplice for not reporting it. I didn't know about the surveillance until 3 days ago. Doesn't matter. You know now, and you're still here. That's enough for a creative prosecutor to build a case. Roman moved to the windows, his profile sharp against the fading daylight. We need to contain this before it reaches the DA. How? Victor asked. Find Kane. Get the evidence back, whatever it takes. And if we can't find him in time, then we go to war. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Alara looked around the room, at Roman standing rigid at the window, at Victor already on his phone mobilizing resources, at Catherine reviewing legal options with the grim focus of someone who knew they were fighting a losing battle. This was her fault, all of it. If she hadn't walked into that restaurant, if she hadn't accepted Roman's help, if she'd just found a shelter or called her sister or done anything except fall into the arms of a man who'd been watching her for weeks. Stop! Roman's voice cut through her spiral. He'd crossed the room without her noticing, his hands on her shoulders. I can see you blaming yourself. Don't. This is on Caleb, on his vindictiveness, on his need to control you even after you left. None of this is your fault. If I hadn't involved you, then you'd be dead or back in his apartment and I'd be safe but incomplete. I made my choice, Alara, and I'd make it again. Even knowing it might destroy you? Especially then. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. You're worth it. Whatever comes next, you're worth it. Before she could respond, Victor's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his expression went dark. We have another problem, he said. Caleb just posted the surveillance evidence online, all of it, with a full statement accusing Roman of stalking, manipulation, and kidnapping. It's going viral. Catherine swore under her breath, Turn on the news, now! Roman grabbed the remote and turned on the massive television mounted on the wall. Every major New York channel was running the same story. Surveillance footage of Alara walking through the city, Roman's men following at a distance, timestamps showing weeks of monitoring. The Chiron read, Billionaire crime lord accused of stalking abuse victim. Caleb's face filled the screen, all manufactured concern and wounded innocence. I just want Alara to be safe, he was saying. I made mistakes in our relationship, but I've apologized and I'm getting help. Roman De Luca, on the other hand, orchestrated a campaign of harassment and intimidation that culminated in him kidnapping her and holding her against her will. I'm coming forward now because I can't stay silent while she's in danger. The reporter asked about the abuse allegations, and Caleb's expression turned pained. Alara is a troubled woman. She struggles with mental health issues, and sometimes she lashes out. I'm not saying I was perfect, but the idea that I systematically abused her is a narrative created by De Luca to justify his own criminal behavior. Alara felt bile rise in her throat. He was doing it. Exactly what she'd feared, rewriting history, painting her as unstable, himself as the concerned boyfriend. Turn it off, she whispered. Roman didn't move. Turn it off! He pressed the button, and the screen went dark. In the silence that followed, Alara could hear her own heartbeat, fast and panicked. This is over, she said. We can't fight this. The evidence is public. The story is out there. We fight back, Roman said. His voice was steel. We don't roll over because Caleb decided to play dirty. We hit back harder. With what? He has surveillance footage. He has a narrative. He's got the sympathy of the entire city. And we have the truth. Roman turned to Catherine. Get me airtime. I don't care what it costs. I want to be on every major network by tomorrow morning. Roman, that's not... Do it. And get Dr. Chen to go public with the medical records. Get character witnesses from the hospital staff who treated her. Get anyone who's ever seen Caleb's real face to speak up. That will take time. Then we buy time. Victor, I want everything you can dig up on Caleb Rourke. Every skeleton in his closet. Every shady deal. Every lie he's ever told. And I want it weaponized. Victor nodded and left the room, already making calls. Catherine hesitated. If you go nuclear on him, it's going to get ugly. Scorched earth ugly. I'm aware. And it might not be enough. The surveillance footage is damning, Roman. Even if we prove Caleb is an abuser, that doesn't negate what you did. I know. Roman looked at Alara, and the intensity in his eyes took her breath away. But I'm not letting him win. Not this time. After Catherine left to make arrangements, Alara and Roman stood alone in the penthouse that had become both fortress and prison. You should let me go, Alara said quietly. Put out a statement saying I'm leaving voluntarily, that we're not involved, that this was all a misunderstanding. Distance yourself from me before this destroys everything you've built. No. Roman, I said no. He crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself to save me. We're in this together, all the way. Why? Why are you willing to risk everything for me? He was quiet for a long moment, his arms tight around her. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with emotion she'd never heard from him before. Because I've spent 15 years building an empire on fear and control and carefully calculated moves. And in all that time, I've never felt anything real. Never let anyone close enough to matter. And then you walked into my restaurant bleeding and broken and looking at me like I was either salvation or damnation. And something in me shifted. You make me feel human again, Alara. Like I'm more than just the sum of my worst decisions. And I'm not giving that up. Not for Caleb, not for the law, not for anything. Alara pulled back just enough to look at his face. You're insane. Probably. And we're probably going to lose. Maybe. But we're going to go down fighting. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate, and tasting like salt from tears she hadn't realized she was crying. He kissed her back with everything he had, his hands in her hair, pulling her closer like he could fuse them together through sheer will. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the city lights glittered beyond the windows like a million tiny promises that neither of them believed anymore. What happens now? Alara asked. Now? Roman's smile was sharp, dangerous, beautiful. Now we show Caleb Rourke what happens when you back a predator into a corner. His phone buzzed. Victor's name on the screen. Roman answered on speaker. Talk to me. We found Kane. He's in Boston, staying at a hotel under a fake name. And boss, he's got the evidence with him. All of it. We can have it back in our possession within 6 hours. Do it. And Victor, make sure Kane understands what happens to people who betray me. Understood. Roman ended the call and looked at Alara with eyes gone cold and calculating. We're getting the evidence back, and then we're going to use it to bury Caleb so deep he'll never see daylight again. How? By giving the media a story they can't resist. A real villain, clear victims, and enough documentation to make them forget we ever bent the rules. He pulled out his phone and started typing. Catherine said it would get ugly. She has no idea. Alara watched him work, making calls, sending messages, orchestrating a counteroffensive with the same cold precision he brought to everything. And she realized that this was who Roman really was. Not the man who'd caught her in the restaurant, not the one who'd stayed up all night watching over her. This was Roman DeLuca, crime lord, strategist, someone who'd survived in a world built on violence by being more ruthless than everyone else, and she was betting her entire future on him. Somewhere in the city, Caleb was probably celebrating, thinking he'd won, that he'd destroyed them both with one well-timed release of evidence. He had no idea what was coming. Roman finished his last call and pulled Alara close, his forehead resting against hers. Last chance, he said quietly. Walk away now, and I'll make sure you're protected. New identity, new city, enough money to never look back. And you? I fight this war alone and probably lose, but you'd be safe. Alara thought about it, really thought about it, about walking away from Roman and his dangerous world, from the media circus, from the legal battles that would define the next months or years, about starting over somewhere quiet, where no one knew her name or her history. It was tempting, so tempting. But running was what she'd always done, running from Caleb, from hard conversations, from her own power, and she was done running. I'm staying, she said. You're sure? I'm terrified, but I'm sure. Roman kissed her forehead, gentle despite the violence simmering beneath his skin. Then hold on tight, because this is going to get worse before it gets better. He had no idea how right he was. At 3 a.m, Victor called with news that Kane was in custody and the evidence was being transported back to New York. At 4, Catherine called to say she'd secured airtime on 3 major networks for a press conference at 10. At 5, Roman's lawyer called to warn that the DA's office was preparing charges and would likely file them within 48 hours. And at 6, as dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, Ilara stood at the windows beside Roman and watched the city wake up to a war. "Ready?" Roman asked. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Let's end this." The press conference was scheduled for 10, but by 8:30 the media had already descended on the hotel conference room like vultures sensing blood. Camera crews jostled for position. Reporters shouted questions at anyone who looked official, and the air crackled with the electric anticipation of a story that would dominate headlines for weeks. Ilara stood backstage with Roman, Catherine, and Dr. Chen, who had agreed, after significant legal maneuvering and appeals to her conscience, to present the medical evidence publicly. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on a simple navy dress that Catherine had assured her looked both professional and sympathetic. She'd barely slept, barely eaten. The coffee she'd forced down an hour ago sat in her stomach like acid. "You don't have to do this," Roman said for the 10th time. "I can handle the press conference alone. We've been over this. If I'm not there, it looks like you're hiding me. Like Caleb's right about everything. He's not right about anything. I know that, you know that, but they—" She gestured toward the wall of sound beyond the curtain. "They don't know anything except what Caleb sold them. And if we want to change that narrative, I need to be visible. I need to tell my own story." Catherine checked her watch. 5 minutes. "Remember what we discussed. Stick to your talking points. Don't let them bait you into emotional responses. And if a question makes you uncomfortable, defer to me or Dr. Chen." "I remember." "And Ms. Vance," Catherine's expression softened slightly, "what you're about to do takes courage. Real courage. Whatever happens after this, you should be proud of that." Before Ilara could respond, Victor appeared from the wings. "We have a problem. Caleb's here." Roman's entire body went rigid. "Here? In the building?" "Downstairs in the lobby. He's giving interviews to anyone with a camera, playing the concerned ex-boyfriend, saying he just wants to see Ilara and make sure she's safe." "Son of a bitch!" Roman started for the door, but Ilara caught his arm. "Don't. That's what he wants. He wants you to lose control, to do something that proves his narrative right. He's using my own press conference to undermine us. Then we use him right back." An idea was forming, reckless and terrifying and possibly brilliant. "Bring him up here." Everyone turned to stare at her. "Absolutely not," Roman said immediately. "Why not? He wants to confront me in public? Let him. Let everyone see what happens when I'm not afraid of him anymore." Catherine shook her head. "That's too unpredictable. We can't control what he'll say, how he'll act. Exactly. We've been trying to control this narrative for days, and it keeps spinning away from us because Caleb's better at manipulation than we are at damage control. So let's stop trying to control it. Let's just tell the truth and let the cameras capture whatever happens." "It's too risky," Roman said, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he was considering it. "Everything about this is risky. At least this way we're on offense instead of defense." Dr. Chen spoke up quietly. "From a clinical perspective, confronting one's abuser in a controlled environment can be empowering, and with this many witnesses, the power dynamic is significantly altered." "You're not seriously advocating for this," Catherine said. "I'm saying it might work. And God knows nothing else has." Roman studied Ilara's face for a long moment. "If we do this, if we bring him up here, you stay behind me. The second things get heated, the second he makes a move toward you, security removes him. Non-negotiable." "Fine." He turned to Victor. "Bring him up, but make sure he goes through metal detectors first. I want him unarmed and on edge." Victor left, and the next few minutes passed in tense silence. Ilara could hear her own heartbeat, feel the adrenaline flooding her system. This was insane. This was possibly the worst decision she'd ever made, but it was her decision, and that made all the difference. When Caleb walked into the backstage area flanked by 2 security guards, he looked exactly the same as he had in the warehouse. Perfectly composed, expensively dressed, radiating the kind of charm that made people instinctively trust him. But Ilara could see beneath it now. Could see the rage simmering in his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands flexed like he wanted to grab something and squeeze. His gaze found hers immediately. "Ilara, thank God. I've been so worried. Save it." Her voice came out stronger than she expected. "I know why you're here. You want to make a scene, undermine the press conference, force me to defend myself to you in front of cameras. So here's your chance. Say what you came to say. Caleb's mask slipped slightly. He glanced at Roman, who stood 2 feet behind Alara like a wall of controlled violence, then back at her. I just want to talk to you, alone, without him influencing everything you say. I don't want to talk to you alone. I don't want to talk to you at all. But since you're here, since you've spent the last week destroying my life on television, let's get this over with. I'm not destroying your life. I'm trying to save it. Caleb took a step forward. Security moved to intercept, but Alara held up a hand, stopping them. You're being manipulated, baby. Can't you see that? He orchestrated this whole thing. The surveillance, the rescue, all of it. It was planned. I know it was planned. He told me. That stopped Caleb cold. He told you? 3 days ago. About the surveillance, about watching me, about waiting for the right moment to intervene. And yes, I was angry. I felt betrayed. But then I thought about why he did it. Because I was too afraid to leave on my own, too convinced that I deserved what you were doing to me. I never... You put me in the hospital twice, Caleb. You broke 3 of my fingers. You gave me a concussion so severe I couldn't see straight for a week. Don't stand there and pretend it wasn't that bad. Caleb's face flushed. You're exaggerating. You always exaggerate when you're trying to make me look bad. Dr. Chen. Alara didn't take her eyes off Caleb. Would you say the medical records are exaggerations? Dr. Chen stepped forward, her expression professional, but her eyes hard. The medical records document 18 months of sustained physical abuse, fractures, contusions, lacerations, and internal injuries consistent with repeated blunt force trauma. There's no exaggeration, only documentation. Those records were obtained illegally, Caleb said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. They were obtained from hospitals where Ms. Vance was treated, Dr. Chen corrected, through proper legal channels with her consent. Would you like to see them? I'd like to talk to my girlfriend without an audience. I'm not your girlfriend, Alara's voice was ice. I haven't been your girlfriend since the night I ran from our apartment with nothing but the clothes on my back because I knew if I stayed, you'd eventually kill me. That's dramatic. Is it? Because according to these medical records, I had internal bleeding from where you kicked me. The doctor said if I'd waited another few hours to come in, I might not have survived. Caleb's composure was cracking now, the charm giving way to the rage she knew too well. You're doing this because of him. He's put these ideas in your head, convinced you that I'm some kind of monster. You are a monster. The words came out quiet but absolute. And the only person who convinced me of that was you. Every time you hit me, every time you apologized and promised it would never happen again and then did it anyway. Every time you made me feel like I was crazy for being afraid when you were the one who made me afraid in the first place. I was trying to help you, Caleb's voice rose, echoing in the small space. You were always so emotional, so irrational. Someone had to keep you grounded. By beating me? By giving you consequences for your actions. By making sure you understood that there were limits to what I would tolerate. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Alara saw Catherine's eyes widen slightly, saw Dr. Chen's expression shift from professional neutrality to barely concealed disgust. Even the security guards looked uncomfortable. Thank you, Alara said quietly. Caleb blinked. For what? For finally being honest. For admitting that you hit me because you thought I deserved it. Because that's what abusers do. They convince themselves that the violence is justified, that they're the real victim, that their partner forced them into it. I'm not an abuser. You just admitted to hitting me as punishment, on camera. She gestured to the small security camera in the corner of the room. That footage is going straight to the police, and when the press conference starts in... She checked the clock. 2 minutes. Everyone is going to hear exactly what kind of man you really are. Caleb's face went white, then red. You bitch! You set me up! I gave you a chance to tell the truth. You chose to prove my point instead. He lunged for her. Roman moved like lightning, intercepting Caleb before he'd crossed half the distance, one hand catching his throat, the other twisting his arm behind his back. Caleb gasped, his face going purple as Roman applied just enough pressure to immobilize without seriously injuring. Touch her again, Roman said, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying the weight of absolute certainty, and I will end you. Not threaten, not warn. End. Do you understand? Caleb managed a strangled nod. Roman released him with enough force that Caleb stumbled and nearly fell. The security guards grabbed him immediately, hauling him upright. "Get him out of here," Catherine said, "and make sure that security footage is sent to Detective Chen immediately." As Caleb was dragged away, still sputtering threats and protests, Alara felt something in her chest unclench. The fear she'd been carrying for 2 years, the bone-deep certainty that Caleb would always have power over her, had just evaporated. She'd faced him, goaded him into revealing his true nature, and walked away unscathed. Roman was at her side immediately. "Are you all right?" "I'm better than all right. I'm free." Catherine cleared her throat. "That was either the bravest or most reckless thing I've ever witnessed. Possibly both. It worked, though, right? Everyone saw him lose control. Everyone heard him admit to the abuse." "Yes, which means the press conference just got significantly easier." Catherine checked her watch. "1 minute. Are you ready?" Alara looked at Roman, who gave her a slight nod. She looked at Dr. Chen, who smiled encouragingly. She thought about everything that had led to this moment, the 2 years of terror, the night she'd run, the weeks she'd spent in Roman's protection, the last 48 hours of media hell. "I'm ready." The lights were blinding. The second they stepped onto the small stage, cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions over each other, and the noise was a physical force. Alara forced herself to breathe, to keep walking, to not let the overwhelming attention drive her back into the shadows. Roman stood beside her at the podium, his presence a steady anchor. Catherine was on her other side, professional and composed. Dr. Chen stood slightly behind them, her medical credentials lending weight to whatever would be said. Catherine spoke first, her voice cutting through the chaos with practiced authority. "Thank you all for coming. We'll have a brief statement, and then we'll take a limited number of questions. Please hold all questions until we've finished." The room quieted slightly. "Over the past week," Catherine continued, "a narrative has been constructed by Caleb Rourke that paints my client, Roman DeLuca, as a predator who stalked and kidnapped Alara Vance. This narrative is false. What actually happened is that Ms. Vance fled a violently abusive relationship, sought help from someone she knew could protect her, and has been voluntarily staying with Mr. DeLuca while she recovers from 2 years of sustained domestic violence." She paused, letting that sink in. "We have extensive medical documentation supporting Ms. Vance's claims of abuse. We have testimony from medical professionals who treated her injuries. And as of 20 minutes ago, we have video footage of Mr. Rourke admitting to physical violence and attempting to assault Ms. Vance in front of multiple witnesses. All of this evidence has been or will be provided to the NYPD and the District Attorney's Office." The room erupted. Questions flew from every direction, but Catherine raised a hand for silence. "Ms. Vance would like to make a statement." She stepped back, and Alara moved to the microphone. Her hands gripped the edges of the podium to keep them from shaking. She looked out at the sea of faces, reporters, camera operators, curious onlookers, and forced herself to speak. "My name is Alara Vance, and for 2 years I was in an abusive relationship with Caleb Rourke." Her voice wavered but held. "He hit me. He controlled me. He isolated me from everyone who cared about me. And when I finally found the courage to leave, he hired a private investigator to hunt me down." She paused, swallowing hard. "Roman DeLuca did not kidnap me. He saved me. Yes, he had people watching me before I left Caleb. Yes, he waited for me to make the decision to run on my own. And yes, he probably broke several laws in the process. But he did it because he saw someone who needed help, and he had the resources to provide it." The questions started again, but Alara pushed through them. "I'm not here to defend everything Roman did. I'm here to tell you that without him, I'd probably be dead. Or back in that apartment, believing Caleb's lies, waiting for the next beating. Roman gave me a choice. He gave me safety. And for that, I will always be grateful." She stepped back and Roman moved to the microphone. "I'm not going to stand here and claim I'm innocent," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "I orchestrated surveillance on Ms. Vance before she came to me for help. I used my resources and connections to gather information on Caleb Rourke. I threatened him when he tried to force Alara to return. All of that is true." He paused, his eyes sweeping the room. "But I did it because I've spent my entire adult life watching people suffer when they could have been helped. I did it because I have power in this city, and I decided to use it for something good for once. And I did it because when I looked at Alara, broken and bleeding and still fighting, I saw someone worth fighting for." The room was silent now, every reporter transfixed. So yes, investigate me. Charge me if you think you have a case, but while you're at it, investigate Caleb Rourke. Look into the hospitals where Alara was treated. Talk to the neighbors who called the police after hearing screaming. Follow the pattern of abuse that's been documented for 18 months. And then ask yourself who the real criminal is here. Roman stepped back and Catherine moved forward to field questions. The next hour was a blur of pointed inquiries, careful answers, and the slow, methodical work of rebuilding a narrative that Caleb had spent a week destroying. Dr. Chen presented the medical evidence with clinical precision, walking through injuries with the kind of detail that made several reporters visibly uncomfortable. Catherine deflected questions about Roman's business dealings with practiced ease, and Alara answered every question about her relationship with Caleb with raw honesty that left no room for doubt. By the time the press conference ended, the tenor in the room had shifted. The reporters who'd arrived expecting to expose a kidnapping had instead witnessed a domestic violence survivor confronting her abuser's lies. It wasn't a complete victory. There were still questions about Roman's methods, still concerns about the surveillance. But the narrative had turned. Backstage, Alara collapsed into a chair and let the adrenaline drain from her system. Her hands were shaking again, but this time from relief rather than fear. "You were incredible," Roman said, crouching in front of her. "You were brave and honest, and you didn't let them shake you. I thought I was going to throw up the entire time. But you didn't. You stood there and told your story, and you changed the conversation." Catherine appeared with her phone pressed to her ear, her expression cautiously optimistic. "That was the DA's office. They're dropping the investigation into you, Roman. Between the medical evidence and the footage of Caleb attacking Alara, they've decided to pursue charges against him instead." The words took a moment to register. They're charging Caleb? Assault, battery, and they're considering additional charges related to the domestic violence. It's not a guarantee he'll serve time, but at minimum, he'll face trial. Alara felt something break open in her chest. Not quite joy, but a fierce satisfaction that finally, there would be consequences for what he'd done. "There's more," Catherine continued. "Several of Caleb's co-workers have come forward in the last hour with stories about his behavior. Apparently he has a history of anger issues at work, inappropriate conduct with female colleagues, and at least one previous domestic violence complaint that was settled out of court." "Who's coming forward?" Alara asked. "People who saw today's press conference and decided they couldn't stay silent anymore. Your honesty gave them permission to speak up." The implications of that settled over Alara like a weight and a gift. By telling her story, by refusing to be ashamed, she'd created space for others to do the same. Over the next 3 days, the story continued to evolve. More women came forward with allegations against Caleb, an ex-girlfriend from college, a coworker he'd dated briefly, 2 women who'd met him through dating apps. The pattern was identical in every case: charming at first, then controlling, then violent. The surveillance footage that had seemed so damning now looked like evidence of due diligence, Roman gathering information before intervening in a dangerous situation. The media coverage shifted from accusing Roman of manipulation to praising him for using his resources to help someone in need. Caleb, meanwhile, was arrested on multiple charges. His lawyer tried to argue that Alara had provoked him, that the backstage confrontation had been entrapment, but the video evidence was too clear. He'd admitted to violence. He'd attempted assault in front of witnesses. There was no spinning that into innocence. Detective Chen closed her investigation with a recommendation that the DA pursue the domestic violence charges aggressively. She even called Alara personally to apologize for initially doubting her story. "I've seen too many cases where the abuser manages to flip the script," Chen said. "I should have recognized what was happening. I'm sorry I made you prove yourself." "You were doing your job," Alara said. "I understand. Still, you deserve better. And for what it's worth, I think DeLuca is a good man underneath all that armor." After she hung up, Alara thought about that. Was Roman a good man? He'd built an empire on violence and fear. He'd broken laws to help her. He'd threatened Caleb with death and probably meant it. But he'd also stayed up all night watching her sleep to keep the nightmares away. He'd given her choices when everyone else in her life had taken them. He'd fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself. Maybe good and bad weren't the right categories. Maybe he was just a man trying to be better than his worst moments, same as anyone. She found him in his office, staring out at the city like always. The view never seemed to change, but she was starting to understand the appeal. From up here, Manhattan looked manageable, containable, like something that could be controlled. "It's over," she said. Roman turned. "Not quite. Caleb's trial will take months. There will be more media attention, more questions. The surveillance issue hasn't completely gone away. I mean, for me, the part where I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next disaster, that's over." He studied her face. "How does it feel?" "Strange. Like I should be relieved, but mostly I just feel exhausted." "That's normal. You've been running on adrenaline for weeks. Now that the immediate threat is gone, your body's finally catching up." Alara moved to stand beside him at the window. The city stretched endlessly, lights beginning to come on as evening approached. "I need to figure out what comes next," she said. "I can't stay here forever living in your penthouse, depending on your protection." "Why not?" "Because that's not a life. That's just hiding in a nicer place." Roman was quiet for a moment. "What do you want? If you could have anything, do anything, what would it be?" It was the same question he'd asked her weeks ago, and this time she had an answer. "I want to go back to school. Finish the degree I dropped out of when I met Caleb. Maybe study social work or counseling, something where I can help other people who are where I was. That's a good goal. And I want my own place. Something small, something mine. Not running away from you, just building something that belongs to me." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because I'm not saying I don't want you in my life. I'm just saying I need to stand on my own feet first." Roman turned to face her fully, his expression unreadable. "I've been thinking about that, about what we are, what we could be. And I realized something." "What?" "I'm not good at relationships. I'm good at control and strategy and maintaining emotional distance. But with you, I don't want distance. I want whatever this is between us to be real. Not built on rescue or gratitude or the adrenaline of surviving together. Real." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying take your time. Get your own place. Go back to school. Figure out who you are when you're not running or hiding or fighting. And when you're ready, if you're ready, we'll see what we can build together." Alara felt tears prick her eyes. "That's very mature of you." "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not surprised. I'm grateful for everything. For saving me, for fighting for me, for understanding that I need space to become myself again." Roman pulled her into his arms, and she let herself lean into the embrace. "You saved yourself, Alara. I just made sure you had somewhere safe to land." They stood like that for a long time, two broken people holding each other together, watching the city transform from day to night. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Alara started looking at apartments, small studios in safe neighborhoods that she could afford with the money Roman had set aside for her. She registered for classes at the community college, choosing a schedule that would let her work part-time while studying. She reconnected with her sister, a tearful phone call that lasted 3 hours and ended with promises to visit soon. She also started therapy. A woman named Dr. Morrison, who specialized in trauma and abuse, who didn't judge when Alara admitted she still had nightmares about Caleb, who helped her understand that healing wasn't linear and setbacks were normal. Roman gave her space but was always there when she needed him. He didn't push for definitions or commitments. He just existed in her orbit, steady, protective, patient, in a way that suggested he understood this was a marathon, not a sprint. Caleb's trial date was set for 4 months out. His lawyer tried multiple times to get the charges reduced, but the weight of evidence, the medical records, the testimony from multiple women, the video of him attempting assault, made plea bargaining difficult. The DA was pushing for maximum sentencing. Alara would have to testify. The thought terrified her, but Dr. Morrison was helping her prepare, teaching her grounding techniques and ways to manage the anxiety of facing him in court. "You've already faced him once," Dr. Morrison pointed out during one session, at the press conference. "And you didn't just survive, you triumphed. You can do it again." "That was different. I had adrenaline then. I had anger. Now I just feel tired." Tired is honest. Tired means you're processing. And when the time comes, you'll find the strength again. 3 weeks after this press conference, Alara signed a lease on a studio apartment in Brooklyn. It was tiny, just a main room with a kitchenette and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, but it had good light and the building was secure, and most importantly, it was hers. Roman helped her move in, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs without complaint. When everything was finally in place, he stood in the middle of the empty feeling space and smiled. It suits you. It's a shoebox. It's a beginning. That night, after Roman left, Alara sat on her second-hand couch and looked around her apartment. It wasn't much. The furniture was mostly donated or bought cheap from thrift stores. The walls were bare. The kitchen had exactly 3 dishes and 2 pots. But it was hers. No one could take it from her. No one could use it as leverage or control. For the first time in 2 years, she fell asleep without fear. Her classes started 2 weeks later. Introduction to Psychology, English Composition, and a seminar on social justice and advocacy. She was the oldest student in most of her classes by at least 5 years, but she didn't care. She threw herself into the work with an intensity that surprised her professors and earned her quiet respect from her classmates. She also started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, answering phones on the crisis line 2 nights a week. It was hard work, listening to women tell stories that mirrored her own, offering resources, trying to convince them that leaving was possible, but it felt meaningful in a way nothing had felt in years. Roman came by her apartment once or twice a week, usually with takeout and an excuse about being in the neighborhood. They'd eat and talk, and sometimes he'd stay late, but he always left before midnight, always respected the boundaries she'd set. One night, about 6 weeks into her new life, she asked him the question that had been circling in her mind. "Do you regret it? Getting involved with me, I mean. All the legal trouble, the media circus, the investigation." Roman set down his chopsticks and considered the question seriously. "No, but I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the system is so broken that the only way to help you was to work around it. I regret that you had to suffer for so long before anyone intervened." "But not helping me." "Never that. Even though we're not—" She gestured vaguely between them. "Whatever we were before, we're exactly what we need to be right now. You're building a life. I'm learning how to be part of someone's life without controlling it. That's progress. Do you think we'll ever—" She couldn't finish the question. Roman reached across the small table and took her hand. "I think that if we're supposed to be together, we will be. And if we're supposed to be friends who survived something terrible and came out stronger, we'll be that. Either way, you're in my life. That's what matters." It was the right answer, the mature, healthy answer that gave her space without closing doors. She wished it didn't make her chest ache quite so much. Caleb's trial began on a cold March morning, 4 months after Alara had run from their apartment. She arrived at the courthouse with Roman on one side and Dr. Morrison on the other, both there for moral support, despite not being allowed in the courtroom during testimony. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Amanda Chen, who'd built her career on domestic violence cases, met them in the hallway. "Are you ready?" she asked Alara. "As ready as I'll ever be. Remember what we discussed. Answer the questions clearly and honestly. Don't elaborate unless asked, and don't let his lawyer rattle you. He's going to try to make you seem unstable or vindictive." "I know." "Good. You've got this." The courtroom was smaller than Alara expected, wood-paneled and formal, with the kind of quiet that felt heavy. Caleb sat at the defense table in a suit that probably cost more than her entire apartment, looking calm and composed like this was a minor inconvenience rather than a criminal trial. When their eyes met, Alara refused to look away. She held his gaze until he broke contact first, and the small victory gave her courage. The trial lasted 3 days. Alara testified on the second day, walking the jury through 2 years of systematic abuse with as much clinical detachment as she could manage. The prosecutor showed photographs of her injuries, read medical reports documenting fractures and contusions, played the audio from the backstage confrontation where Caleb admitted to hitting her. Caleb's lawyer tried to paint her as vindictive, suggested she'd exaggerated the abuse to justify her relationship with Roman, implied that she was mentally unstable and had provoked the violence. But Alara didn't break. She answered every question with brutal honesty, acknowledged her own imperfections, and refused to let him twist her words into something they weren't. The other women testified too, Caleb's ex-girlfriend, who'd filed a police report that mysteriously disappeared, the coworker who'd ended up in the emergency room after a date gone wrong, the woman from the dating app who'd recognized the pattern early and run before it escalated. Together, their testimonies painted a picture that was impossible to deny. Caleb Rourke was a serial abuser who'd left a trail of broken women in his wake. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned with a guilty verdict on all counts, Alara felt something fundamental shift in her chest. Not quite closure. Dr. Morrison had warned her that closure was a myth, that healing was ongoing, but a sense of justice that had eluded her for so long. Caleb's sentencing was set for 2 weeks later. The judge gave him 7 years with eligibility for parole after 4 if he completed anger management and domestic violence intervention programs. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough to balance 2 years of terror, but it was something. Alara walked out of the courthouse into spring sunshine with Roman beside her and Dr. Morrison just ahead, and for the first time since this all began, she felt like she could breathe fully. "How do you feel?" Roman asked. "Like I've been carrying a boulder and someone finally let me set it down." "That's a good feeling." "It is." They stood on the courthouse steps, watching people stream past, lawyers and defendants and families and journalists, all caught up in their own dramas, their own fights for justice or survival. "What now?" Roman asked. Alara thought about her apartment, her classes, her volunteer work at the shelter. Thought about the life she was building piece by piece, choice by choice. Thought about the man beside her who'd given her the space to build it. Now I finish my semester. I keep volunteering. I keep going to therapy. I keep putting one foot in front of the other until walking doesn't feel so hard anymore. And after that, she turned to look at him fully. After that, maybe we figure out what this is, what we are. When I'm not broken anymore and you're not trying to save me. Roman's smile was slow and genuine, transforming his usually severe features into something almost soft. "I'd like that." "Yeah? Yeah, but Alara, you were never broken. Damaged, maybe. Hurt, definitely, but not broken. Broken things can't heal, and you're healing beautifully." The words made her eyes sting with unexpected tears. She'd spent so long thinking of herself as irreparably damaged, as someone who'd been destroyed by what Caleb had done. But maybe Roman was right. Maybe she'd just been wounded, and wounds could close given time and care. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me, the real me, underneath all the trauma. For believing I could be more than what happened to me." Roman pulled her into his arms right there on the courthouse steps, and she let herself sink into the embrace. Around them, the city continued its relentless motion, but for this moment they were still, grounded, whole. 6 months later, on a warm September evening, Alara stood on the balcony of her apartment, which she'd upgraded to a 1-bedroom in a better neighborhood, and watched the sun set over Brooklyn. Her phone buzzed with a text from Roman asking if she wanted company for dinner. She smiled and typed back yes. They'd been slowly, carefully rebuilding what had started in trauma into something that resembled a real relationship. Dates that didn't involve lawyers or press conferences. Conversations that went deeper than survival strategies. Quiet nights where they just existed together without the weight of crisis pushing them together. It wasn't perfect. Roman still struggled with his need to control situations, and Alara still had nightmares sometimes. But they were learning, growing, figuring out how to be two whole people choosing to be together instead of two broken pieces clinging to each other. When Roman arrived with Thai food and a bottle of wine, Alara met him at the door with a kiss that tasted like promise and possibility. "Good day?" he asked. "Great day. I got an A on my social work midterm, and one of the women from the crisis line called to thank me. She left her abuser last week." "That's incredible." "It is." Alara took the food into the kitchen, plates clattering as she set the table. "What about you?" "Spent most of the day in negotiations for a new property development. Nothing exciting." He poured wine into 2 glasses. "But I did get a call from Detective Chen." Alara paused. "About what?" Caleb violated his parole conditions, made contact with one of his ex-girlfriends, tried to convince her to recant her testimony. She recorded the conversation and turned it over to the police. "What happens now?" "His parole is revoked. He serves the full 7 years, possibly more, depending on what the judge decides about the violation." Alara absorbed that information. A year ago, she would have felt satisfaction, vindication, maybe even joy at Caleb facing additional consequences. Now she just felt tired and a little sad that he'd learned nothing, that he was still the same manipulative man who'd put her in the hospital. "Good," she said finally. "He can't hurt anyone else from prison." "No, he can't." They ate on her small balcony as the city lights began to twinkle on below them. The conversation drifted from serious to mundane, her classes, his work, The book she was reading, the restaurant he was thinking of investing in. Easy conversation between two people who knew each other's darkness and had chosen to walk toward light together. After dinner, they moved inside to her couch. Roman pulled her against his chest, and she curled into him with the kind of comfort that only came from time and trust. "I've been thinking," Roman said into her hair. "Dangerous." He huffed a quiet laugh. "I've been thinking about what you said on the courthouse steps, about figuring out what we are." Alara's heart picked up speed. And I think I know what I want, but I need to know what you want first." She was quiet for a moment, organizing her thoughts. "I want someone who sees me as an equal partner, not a project or a responsibility. I want someone who tells me the truth even when it's hard. I want someone who understands that I'm still healing and that's okay. I can be that person. I want to be that person. I know you do, and I think you are, mostly. But Roman, you spent 15 years building walls around yourself, and I spent 2 years having walls built around me by someone else. We're both still learning how to be vulnerable without it being a crisis. So what do we do?" Alara shifted so she could look at his face. "We keep doing what we're doing, dating, learning each other, building something real instead of something born from trauma. And eventually, when we're both ready, we take the next step." "What's the next step?" "I don't know yet. But we'll figure it out together." Roman kissed her forehead, gentle and sure. "Together. I like the sound of that." They stayed on the couch until late, talking about nothing and everything. And when Roman finally left around midnight, Alara stood at her window and watched his car disappear into the flow of traffic. She thought about the woman who'd stumbled into a restaurant 8 months ago, broken and bleeding and convinced she'd never be safe again. That woman felt like a stranger now. Someone Alara had been in another life, someone who'd survived something terrible and emerged transformed. She thought about Caleb spending the next 7 years in a cell, hopefully learning something about consequences and accountability, but probably just nursing his rage and his sense of victimhood. She thought about Roman driving through the city he controlled, carrying the weight of his empire and his past, but trying, really trying, to be someone better for her. And she thought about herself. 26 years old, starting over, building a life from scratch with nothing but determination and the hard-won knowledge that she deserved better than what she'd accepted for so long. The city glittered below her window, infinite and indifferent and full of possibility. Tomorrow she had class, and a shift at the crisis line, and a study group for her trauma and recovery seminar. Next week she had a date with Roman at a gallery opening and a session with Dr. Morrison and an exam she needed to ace. The months after that were blank pages waiting to be filled, and for the first time in years, that didn't terrify her. It exhilarated her. She'd fallen that night in December, literally fallen, her body giving out from fear and pain and exhaustion. But Roman had caught her, and then she'd learned to stand on her own. And now, finally, she was learning to walk forward into whatever came next. The falling hadn't destroyed her. It had simply brought her low enough to finally build herself back up properly. This time with foundations that no one could shake. Walls built from choice rather than fear, and doors that only she controlled. In the reflection of her window, Alara saw not a victim or a survivor, but simply a woman. Scarred, yes, changed, absolutely, but whole in the ways that mattered. She smiled at her reflection, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Tomorrow was another day of building, of healing, of becoming whoever she was meant to be. And for the first time in 2 years, she couldn't wait to see what that looked like.